The rain hammered against the restaurant window as Emily's hand trembled, gripping the receipt where she'd just written the words that would destroy everything. Your fiancé is planning to frame you. Trust no one. Across the dining room, billionaire Alexander Hayes was about to propose a toast to the woman secretly plotting his complete annihilation. Emily had 30 seconds before the waiter collected that receipt. 30 seconds to decide if saving a stranger's empire was worth losing the only job keeping her alive. She placed it on the table. The explosion was immediate. If you're ready to see how a shy waitress brought a billionaire to his knees, stay with me until the end, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The Metropolitan was the kind of restaurant where a single dinner cost more than Emily Carter's monthly rent. Crystal chandeliers worth 6 figures. Wine lists that read like investment portfolios. Clientele who treated $100 tips like loose change. Emily hated every polished inch of it. Not because she was ungrateful for the job, she desperately needed the money, but because places like this reminded her exactly how far she'd fallen and how impossible climbing back up had become. Table 7 needs water, Marco hissed as he swept past her, his arms loaded with plates that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. And for the love of everything, smile. You look like you're attending a funeral. Emily forced her lips upward into something that might charitably be called a smile. 6 hours into her shift, her feet screamed inside the cheap heels she'd bought at a discount store in Queens. The uniform they'd given her was too tight across the shoulders, too loose at the waist, altered by someone who clearly didn't care about fit so much as making sure the staff looked interchangeable. She grabbed the water pitcher and headed toward table 7. The rain outside had intensified, turning Manhattan streets into rivers of brake lights and honking frustration. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Emily could see people huddled under inadequate umbrellas, scrambling for cabs that wouldn't stop. She'd be one of them soon enough, soaked to the bone on her way to the subway. If she was lucky, she'd get home before midnight. If she was really lucky, Mrs. Chen wouldn't be waiting in the hallway to discuss the rent Emily was already 3 days late paying. Table 7 was occupied by a couple that didn't match. The woman was stunning in that effortless way that only money could buy. Mid-30s, blonde hair that caught the light like spun gold, a dress that probably cost more than Emily's security deposit. She laughed at something on her phone, the sound carrying across the dining room like wind chimes. The man was different, younger than Emily expected, maybe early 30s, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes that seemed to be looking at everything and nothing simultaneously. His suit was perfectly tailored, but he wore it like armor rather than decoration. There was something wounded about him, something that made Emily think of soldiers she'd seen in documentaries, people who'd survived things they couldn't talk about. Water? Emily asked quietly, already pouring before either of them acknowledged her existence. The woman, Vanessa, according to the reservation, didn't look up from her phone. The man nodded once, his attention fixed on something outside the window. Alexander Hayes. She'd recognized him the moment he walked in, though not because she followed billionaires or tech news. His face had been on the cover of Manhattan Business Weekly in the waiting room of her father's oncologist, back when her father was still alive, back when Emily still believed doctors could fix anything. CEO revolutionizes clean energy, the headline had screamed. Single father builds empire while raising daughter alone. The story had made him sound like a superhero. Widowed young, raised a little girl by himself, built a multi-billion-dollar company from nothing, all while maintaining some kind of moral center that other billionaires seemed to lack. In person, he just looked tired. The lobster here is acceptable, Vanessa said, finally glancing up from her phone. She wasn't talking to Alexander. She was talking at him, the way people spoke to furniture. Though I told Daddy the Wellington room would have been more appropriate for an engagement celebration. Engagement, right. Emily had heard the hostess gossiping about it in the break room. Alexander Hayes was finally remarrying after 7 years alone. The wedding was supposed to be the social event of the season. Emily finished pouring and retreated before either of them could make additional requests. Invisible. That's what good service meant at places like the Metropolitan. Be there when needed, vanish when not. She was halfway back to the kitchen when she heard Vanessa's voice again, sharper this time. No, Mother, I'm handling it. Everything's on schedule. Emily shouldn't have looked back, but something in Vanessa's tone, the edge that didn't match the wind chime laugh, made her pause. Vanessa was standing now, phone pressed to her ear, heading toward the restrooms with quick, angry steps. Alexander remained at the table, staring at his water glass like it contained answers to questions he hadn't asked yet. The kitchen was chaos. Friday nights always were. Chef Guillaume was screaming in French about something involving scallops and incompetence. The dishwasher had backed up again, flooding the floor near the loading dock. Two servers were arguing about whose section included the party of 8 that had just walked in. Emily grabbed a tray of appetizers for table 12 and tried to ignore the growing pressure behind her eyes that signaled a headache coming. "Carter!" She turned. Marco was standing by the expo station, looking annoyed. "VIP in the dining room needs his wine refreshed. Table 7. Move." Emily wanted to point out that table 7 was technically Marco's section, that she was already carrying appetizers for another table, that her feet hurt and her head was pounding, and she was 3 days late on rent because this job barely paid enough to survive. Instead, she said, "Got it." She delivered the appetizers first, some kind of tartare arrangement that cost $48 and would take an average person 3 bites to finish. Then she grabbed the wine bottle Marco indicated and headed back toward table 7. Alexander Hayes was alone now. He sat very still, hands folded on the table, staring at nothing. Up close, Emily could see the exhaustion carved into his face, dark circles under his eyes, a jaw that looked like it spent most nights clenched. Whatever the magazine said about his success, it was costing him something. "More wine, sir?" Emily asked quietly. He blinked, focusing on her for the first time. "What? Would you like me to refill your wine?" For a moment, he just looked at her. Really looked, not through her the way most wealthy people did. His eyes were gray, she realized, storm cloud gray. "Sure," he said finally. "Why not?" Emily poured carefully, making sure not to drip on the pristine white tablecloth. This wine cost $300 a bottle. She knew because she'd accidentally knocked one over during training and spent the next month working extra shifts to pay for it. "You look terrified," Alexander said suddenly. Emily nearly dropped the bottle. "Excuse me?" "Of me. Or this place. Or both." He leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her want to flee. "You've been working here how long?" 4 months. The words came out before she could stop them. You weren't supposed to engage in personal conversation with guests. You were supposed to smile, nod, serve, and disappear. And you hate every second of it. It wasn't a question. Emily set the bottle down carefully, buying herself time to figure out how to respond without getting fired. "The Metropolitan is a wonderful restaurant," she said, using the script they drilled into her during training. "We're honored to serve—" "That's not what I asked." Emily met his eyes again. Mistake. Because there was something there that looked almost human, almost kind, and she hadn't expected that. "I need the job," she said simply. Alexander nodded slowly like she'd confirmed something he already knew. "Yeah, I get that." Before Emily could figure out what that meant, Vanessa returned from the restroom. Her face was flushed, her eyes bright with something that might have been anger or excitement or both. "Darling," she said, sliding back into her seat with practiced grace. "I've been thinking about the wedding." Emily took that as her cue to vanish. She stepped away from the table, intending to retreat to the kitchen. That's when she heard it. The restroom hallway was poorly designed, sound carried, voices echoed. Usually it was just drunk women laughing about their dates or complaining about their shoes. But this was different. "Signed the prenup already, you idiot?" A woman's voice. Not Vanessa. Older, sharper. "After the wedding, we move forward with phase 2. And Hayes won't suspect anything?" A man this time. Deep voice, expensive sounding, the kind of voice that belonged to lawyers or politicians. "Alexander suspects everyone, but he won't suspect me. I've spent 2 years building his trust." That was definitely Vanessa, but her voice had changed completely. The wind chime laugh was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. Emily froze. She was standing in the middle of the hallway now, tray still in her hands, invisible to the 3 people having this conversation around the corner. She should walk away, should pretend she hadn't heard anything, should mind her own business and protect her job and her rent and her survival. "The fraud charges will destroy him," the older woman said. "Public scandal, federal investigation, everything. Hayes Technologies will collapse within a week." And we'll be positioned to acquire it for nothing, the man added. Your lawyer already has the paperwork ready? David's been preparing for months, Vanessa said. The offshore accounts, the falsified records, the insider trading evidence, it's all ready to deploy. Alexander will be facing 20 years in federal prison before he even understands what happened. Emily's hands started shaking. The tray rattled. What about the daughter? The older woman asked. What about her? Vanessa's voice was ice. She's 7. She'll go to whatever relatives Alexander has. Not my problem. Vanessa, darling, you're certain he won't? Mother, I've been planning this since the day I met him. Alexander Hayes is brilliant, powerful, and completely broken. He's been alone so long he doesn't remember what genuine affection looks like. I played the perfect widow, the understanding partner, the woman who could heal his wounded heart. He never suspected a thing. The tray was definitely shaking now. Emily pressed it against her stomach, trying to steady herself. After the wedding, the man, David, the lawyer, prompted. 1 month, Vanessa confirmed. Long enough to make it look legitimate. Then we leak the evidence to the SEC, the press, everyone. Alexander goes down for financial crimes he didn't commit. I file for divorce as the betrayed wife, and we walk away with everything. His company, his assets, his reputation, all of it. Emily couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't process what she was hearing. This was insane. This was criminal. This was footsteps. They were coming back. Emily spun around and practically ran back into the dining room, her heart slamming against her ribs. She made it to the kitchen entrance before her brain started working again. Alexander Hayes was being set up, framed, destroyed, and his fiancée, the woman he was planning to marry, the woman he'd trusted enough to let into his life and his daughter's life, was orchestrating the whole thing. Emily stood in the kitchen doorway, tray clutched to her chest, trying to figure out what to do. Tell someone? Who? The restaurant manager who barely knew her name? The police who'd laugh at a waitress making wild accusations about a billionaire's fiancé? Alexander himself, who'd probably think she was crazy or angling for some kind of reward? She had no proof. No evidence. Just an overheard conversation that could have been taken out of context or misunderstood or... No. She knew what she'd heard, and it was real. Vanessa was going to destroy Alexander Hayes, was going to send him to prison, steal his company, and abandon his 7-year-old daughter without a second thought. And Emily was the only person who knew. Carter, order up for table 9, Chef Guillaume's voice cut through her paralysis. Emily grabbed the plates mechanically, her mind still racing. She delivered the food, refilled water glasses, smiled at customers, moved through the restaurant like a ghost, all while watching table 7. Vanessa had returned, all golden hair and perfect smiles. She was touching Alexander's hand across the table, leaning close to whisper something that made him almost smile, playing her part flawlessly. Alexander looked at her like she was oxygen. Emily felt sick. The night crawled forward, more customers, more orders, more smiles that didn't reach anyone's eyes. Emily's shift was supposed to end at 10, but Marco informed her she'd need to stay until closing because someone had called out. Fine. Whatever. She wasn't sure she could leave anyway, not with this information burning a hole through her chest. At 11:30, Marco approached her near the coffee station. Table 7 needs their check, he said. And Hayes asked for you specifically. Emily's stomach dropped. What? The billionaire. He asked for the waitress who poured his wine. That's you, right? Marco looked annoyed, like this was somehow an inconvenience to him personally. Go take care of it, and try not to screw it up. Guy like that tips big if you don't irritate him. Emily took the check, $3,400 for a meal that had lasted 3 hours, and approached table 7 on legs that felt like water. Alexander and Vanessa were standing now, preparing to leave. Vanessa was on her phone again, turned slightly away. Your check, sir, Emily said quietly, setting the leather folder on the table. Alexander opened it, glanced at the total without reaction, and pulled out a black credit card that probably had no limit. Then he looked at Emily again. Thank you, he said, and there was something in his voice that sounded almost genuine. For the wine and the honesty. Emily had no idea what to say to that. She nodded mutely. Vanessa turned back, flashing a brilliant smile. Ready, darling? I told the driver to meet us at the front. Yeah. Alexander handed the check folder back to Emily. Just need to sign. This was it. Her last chance. In 60 seconds, they'd be gone. Alexander would go home with his fiancée, plan his wedding, walk directly into the trap that would destroy his entire life. And Emily would go back to her apartment in Queens 3 days late on rent, wondering if she could have done something. Her hand moved before her brain caught up. She grabbed a pen from her apron, flipped the receipt over, and in small, quick handwriting, she wrote, "Your fiancée is planning to frame you for fraud after the wedding. She's working with someone named David. They're going to steal your company and send you to prison. I heard them talking. I'm not lying. Please be careful." E. She placed the receipt back in the folder, handed it to Alexander with trembling fingers. He opened it, signed the credit card slip without looking. Then he saw the message. Emily watched his face change, watched the color drain from his expression, watched his jaw clench as his eyes scanned the words once, twice, 3 times. He looked up at her. "What is this?" "Your receipt, sir." Her voice was barely a whisper. "This? What you wrote?" "I heard them," Emily said, the words tumbling out now that she'd started. In the hallway by the restrooms, her and 2 other people. They were talking about framing you for financial crimes, about destroying you after the wedding, about taking your company. I know it sounds crazy, but I swear I'm telling the truth. I don't want anything from you. Someone needed to know. Alexander stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "You're serious?" "Yes." "You're accusing my fiancé of, planning to destroy your entire life?" "Yes." Across the table, Vanessa had turned back around. She was watching them now, her perfect smile faltering slightly. "Darling, is everything all right?" Alexander didn't answer her. He was still looking at Emily, holding the receipt like it might explode. "Who are you?" he asked. "Nobody," Emily said honestly. "Just someone who overheard something terrible and couldn't stay quiet about it." "Alexander?" Vanessa's voice had an edge now. "What's going on?" He turned to her slowly, and Emily watched as his expression shifted from shock to something harder, something that looked like steel forming in real time. "Who's David?" he asked quietly. Vanessa's face went blank. Just for a second, but Emily saw it. "David? Darling, I don't know what you're—" "David," Alexander repeated. "The lawyer who's been preparing paperwork for months. The one helping you set up offshore accounts and falsified records to frame me for insider trading." The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Vanessa recovered quickly. "Alexander, I have no idea what you're talking about. This waitress clearly—" "Don't!" The single word cut through the air like a blade. "Don't lie to me. Not now." "I'm not lying. This is insane. Some random employee makes wild accusations and you just believe—" "David Thornton," Alexander said. "Your corporate attorney. The one you've been meeting with every Thursday for the past 6 months. The one who handled your mother's estate restructuring last year." Vanessa's face went white. "How did you—" "I'm not an idiot, Vanessa. I'm just someone who wanted to believe that maybe, after all this time alone, I'd found someone genuine." His voice was quiet now, almost sad. "But I've had investigators watching you for 3 weeks." The floor dropped out from under Emily's stomach. "You knew?" Vanessa's voice was barely audible. "I suspected. I didn't want to believe it." Alexander pulled out his phone. "The offshore accounts are in your name. The falsified records have your digital signature. And 20 minutes ago, my security team intercepted your mother and David Thornton in the lobby of this restaurant where they were waiting for you to finish dinner." Vanessa grabbed the back of her chair. "Alexander, please, let me explain." "Explain what? That you spent 2 years pretending to love me so you could steal everything I've built? That you were willing to send me to prison and abandon my daughter?" His voice cracked slightly on the last word. "What exactly is there to explain?" People were staring now. The entire restaurant had gone quiet, everyone watching the scene unfold like it was dinner theater. "You don't understand," Vanessa said desperately. "Your company, the money, it was never supposed to—" "Get out!" Alexander eat. "Get out!" He wasn't yelling. Somehow that made it worse. "And if you're smart, you'll get a very good lawyer, because I'm pressing charges for conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and about 15 other felonies my legal team has been documenting for weeks." Vanessa looked at Emily then, and the hatred in her eyes was so pure, so venomous that Emily actually stepped backward. You, Vanessa hissed. You pathetic little… She saved me, Alexander interrupted. This waitress you probably didn't even see as human saved me from making the worst mistake of my life. So if you're looking for someone to blame, try a mirror. Vanessa grabbed her purse. For a moment, Emily thought she might actually throw it at someone. Instead, she turned on her expensive heels and walked toward the exit with her head high, like this was all somehow beneath her. The restaurant door slammed behind her. Silence. Then slowly, the ambient noise returned. Conversations picked up again. Silverware clinked against plates. The world kept turning. Alexander sank back into his chair, the receipt still clutched in his hand. Emily realized she should probably leave. Should definitely leave. She'd done what she needed to do, and now she should retreat to the kitchen before… Wait, Alexander said. She froze. He looked up at her, and there was something raw in his expression now. The armor had cracked. Thank you, he said quietly. I don't know why you did that, but thank you. Emily's voice caught. She was going to hurt you, hurt your daughter. I heard what she said about your little girl, and She couldn't finish, because suddenly she was thinking about her own father, about watching him die slowly while bill collectors circled like vultures, about being completely alone in a city that didn't care if you lived or died. Sorry, she whispered. I should go. What's your name? Emily Carter? Emily. He said it like he was testing the weight of it. How long have you worked here? 4 months, though probably not any more after tonight. She tried to smile. Failed. Worth it, though. Alexander stood up, pulled out his wallet, and placed $5,000 in cash on the table. That's for the information, he said, and for your job, which you're definitely going to lose after this circus. Emily stared at the money. I can't. That's too much. It's not enough. Not for what you just did. He grabbed a business card from his jacket pocket and placed it on top of the cash. That's my private number. When they fire you, and they will fire you probably in the next 10 minutes, call me. I'll make sure you land somewhere better than this. You don't have to… Oh, yeah, I do. He looked at her for a long moment. You saved my daughter's future tonight. That's worth more than money. But money's all I can offer right now, so please, take it. Before Emily could respond, Marco appeared at her elbow. Carter, manager's office. Now. Of course. Emily grabbed the money and the business card, shoving both into her apron with shaking hands. She looked at Alexander one more time. Good luck, she said softly. With everything. Then she followed Marco toward what she knew would be her execution. The manager's office smelled like old coffee and disappointment. Robert Morrison sat behind his desk, looking at Emily like she was something unpleasant he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. Do you have any idea what you just did? He asked. I told a customer the truth. You created a scene in the middle of dinner service. You made wild accusations against a guest. He stopped, running his hand through his thinning hair. Alexander Hayes just called his lawyer. Vanessa Beaumont is threatening to sue the restaurant. The owner is on the phone screaming at me right now. So you're going to explain to me exactly what happened, and it better be good. Emily told him. All of it. The conversation she'd overheard, the receipt, the confrontation. Morrison listened with a face like stone. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You're fired, he said finally. I know. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You'll receive your final paycheck in the mail. Okay. And Emily? He looked almost sad. For what it's worth, I believe you probably heard what you say you heard. But that doesn't matter. Not in a place like this. We can't have staff getting involved in customers' personal lives. You understand that, right? She understood. She'd always understood. The world protected people like Vanessa Beaumont, and it discarded people like Emily Carter. 20 minutes later, she was standing on the street in the pouring rain, still wearing her uniform because security hadn't given her time to change. Her apron was soaked. The money was still inside it, thank God, but the business card Alexander had given her was disintegrating in the rain. Emily stood there, watching the ink run, watching his private number become illegible. Of course, that's how this would end. She'd saved a billionaire from destruction, and all she had to show for it was $5,000 and no job. The rain intensified. Emily started walking toward the subway, her heels splashing through puddles that would probably ruin them. She made it half a block before she heard the car. A Ferrari. Midnight blue. Pulling up to the curb beside her, the window rolled down. Alexander Hayes looked at her through the rain. "Get in," he said. Emily stood there, water streaming down her face. "What?" "Get in the car, Emily. We need to talk." "About what?" "About a job offer." He opened the passenger door from the inside. "A real one, not waiting tables. Something that might actually matter." "I don't understand it." "I know, but you trusted me enough to warn me about Vanessa. So trust me now, please. Get in the car." Emily looked at the subway entrance, then back at the Ferrari. Every instinct she had screamed that this was a bad idea, that getting into a billionaire's car in the middle of the night was how people ended up on true crime podcasts. But she was soaked, exhausted, unemployed, and late on rent. And something in Alexander Hayes' eyes looked almost human. So Emily Carter, the shy waitress from Queens who'd just saved a billionaire's empire, got into the car. The door closed behind her with a sound like a bank vault ceiling. And somewhere in Manhattan, the rain kept falling. The Ferrari's interior smelled like leather and money. Emily sat rigid in the passenger seat, acutely aware that her soaked uniform was probably leaving water stains on upholstery that cost more than her entire year's salary. Alexander drove in silence, his jaw tight, hands gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping him anchored. The rain hammered against the windshield, turning Manhattan into a blur of lights and motion. "Where are we going?" Emily finally asked. "My place. We'll talk there." Every survival instinct Emily possessed started screaming. "I don't think that's—" "You'll be safe." He glanced at her briefly. "I have a 7-year-old daughter and a housekeeper who's been with me for 5 years. You're not walking into some kind of trap." "I didn't say Ade." "You were thinking it. And you should be thinking it. You don't know me." He turned onto Park Avenue, the Ferrari handling the wet streets like they were made of glass. "But right now, you're unemployed, soaking wet, and I'm guessing about 3 days late on rent based on how terrified you looked when you poured my wine." Emily's face flushed. "You noticed that?" "I notice everything. It's kept me alive in business." He pulled into an underground garage beneath one of those buildings Emily had only seen in magazines. The kind with doormen and marble lobbies and apartments that cost more per month than most people made in a year. "Come on." The elevator ride to the penthouse took 45 seconds. Emily counted each one, trying not to think about how badly this could go wrong. Alexander stood beside her, staring at his phone, scrolling through what looked like legal documents. "Is Vanessa really going to jail?" Emily asked. "If my lawyers have anything to say about it, yes." His voice was flat, emotionless. "Conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, corporate espionage. She'll be lucky if she gets less than 10 years. And the other two?" "Her mother and David Thornton are already in custody. FBI picked them up an hour ago." He looked up from his phone. "You saved me from marrying someone who was planning to destroy my life. I don't take that lightly." The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. Emily had never seen anything like it. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Furniture that looked like it belonged in museums. Art on the walls that was probably worth more than her childhood home. Everything was pristine, elegant, and completely devoid of warmth. It looked like a showroom, not a place where people actually lived. "Maria," Alexander called out. "We have a guest." A woman in her 50s appeared from somewhere deeper in the apartment. She took one look at Emily's soaked uniform and immediately shifted into motion. "Dios mío, she's drowning. Alexander, what were you thinking bringing her up here like this?" Maria was already pulling Emily toward what looked like a bathroom. "Come on, honey. Let's get you dry before you catch pneumonia." "I'm fine, really." "You're shaking. That's not fine." Maria had the kind of voice that didn't accept arguments. "Alexander, get her some dry clothes and make tea. Not coffee, tea. Something warm." 20 minutes later, Emily was sitting on a couch that probably cost more than a car, wearing sweatpants and a Columbia University hoodie that were both 3 sizes too big, holding a cup of tea that actually did make her feel slightly more human. Alexander sat across from her, still in his wetsuit, looking like he'd forgotten to change, or didn't care. "So," he said, "the job offer." Emily wrapped her hands around the teacup. "You don't owe me anything." "I disagree, but that's not why I'm offering. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I need someone I can trust. And right now, you're the only person in New York who's proven they're not trying to destroy me. You barely know me. I know you risked your job to warn a stranger about a conspiracy. I know you didn't ask for money or favors. You just did the right thing because it was the right thing. He ran his hand through his wet hair. That's more than I can say for most people in my life. What kind of job are we talking about? Alexander was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, vulnerable. I need a wife. Emily choked on her tea. What? Not a real one. A temporary one. For appearances. He stood up, started pacing. The media storm from this Vanessa situation is going to be catastrophic. My company's stock is going to tank. Investors are going to panic, and my daughter... His voice cracked slightly. Sophie's already been through so much. Her mother died when she was 6 months old. I've tried to give her stability, but now there's going to be reporters and photographers and everyone asking why Daddy's fiancée tried to send him to prison. Issam. So you want me to pretend to be your wife to... what? Make it look like you've moved on? To make it look like I have someone genuine in my life. Someone who isn't interested in my money or my company. He stopped pacing, looked at her directly. I'll pay you. A lot. Enough to never worry about rent again. Enough to start over completely. 1 year. You play the role of my wife in public, help provide stability for Sophie, and when it's over, you walk away with enough money to do whatever you want with your life. This was insane. This was absolutely insane. You want to pay me to fake marry you? Emily said slowly, making sure she understood correctly. Yes. Because your actual fiancé turned out to be a criminal. Correct? And you think the solution is to hire a waitress you met 3 hours ago to pretend to be your wife. When you say it like that, it sounds ridiculous. It is ridiculous. Alexander sat back down, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked almost human. Exhausted, broken, desperate. I know, he said quietly. I know it's crazy. But Emily, I have spent 7 years building walls to protect myself and my daughter, and tonight I found out that someone I trusted, someone I was planning to marry, spent 2 years planning my complete destruction. I don't know who to trust anymore, except apparently you. Emily set down her teacup. Why me? Really? Because you had nothing to gain and everything to lose, and you still told me the truth. He met her eyes. And because when Vanessa talked about abandoning Sophie, you looked like someone had punched you. You cared about a kid you've never met. That tells me something about who you are. I lost my father 2 years ago, Emily heard herself say. Cancer. I watched bill collectors circle while he was dying. Watched people who claimed to care about him disappear the second things got hard. So yeah, when I heard Vanessa talk about throwing away your daughter like she was nothing, She stopped, surprised by the emotion in her own voice. I couldn't let that happen. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet that happens when two broken people recognize something in each other. 1 year, Alexander said finally. You live here, appear in public as my wife, help me protect Sophie from this media nightmare. In return, I'll pay you $5 million. Emily's brain short-circuited. $5 million? Half up front, half when the year ends, plus living expenses, wardrobe, anything you need. He pulled out his phone, started typing. I'll have my lawyers draw up a contract. Everything will be official and legal. No tricks, no hidden clauses. This is insane, I know. I don't know anything about being a billionaire's wife. Neither did Vanessa, apparently. She was just better at faking it. He looked at her. Emily, I'm not asking you to love me or even like me. I'm asking you to help me protect my daughter and my company for 1 year. That's all. Emily thought about her apartment in Queens, about Mrs. Chen waiting for late rent, about job applications that never got responses, about eating ramen for dinner 4 nights a week and wondering if life would ever get better. $5 million would change everything. But this wasn't about money. Not really. This was about a 7-year-old girl who was about to have her world destroyed by media coverage of her father's failed engagement. This was about a man who'd been betrayed by someone he trusted and was desperately trying to hold his life together. This was about Emily finally having the power to help someone instead of being the person who always needed help. I want to meet Sophie first, she said. Alexander blinked. What? Your daughter. Before I agree to anything, I want to meet her. Because if I'm going to be part of her life for a year, she should have some say in whether she wants me there. For the first time that night, Alexander almost smiled. She's asleep. Then I'll meet her tomorrow. And if she doesn't like you, then we figure something else out. Emily stood up, the oversized sweatpants threatening to fall down. But I'm not making this decision without considering her. She's the one who matters most in all of this. Alexander studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. I'll introduce you as, what? A friend? A friend works? And if Sophie does like you, if you decide to do this? Emily took a deep breath. Then I guess you're getting a fake wife. Maria appeared with blankets and pillows. The guest room is ready. You're staying here tonight, yes? Not going back out in that weather. Emily wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could make it home on the subway, that she didn't need charity, that she was fine. But she was tired of pretending to be fine. Thank you, she said quietly. The guest room was bigger than her entire apartment. Emily lay in a bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud, staring at the ceiling, wondering what the hell she'd just agreed to consider. Fake wife. To a billionaire. For $5 million. This was either the best decision of her life or the worst. She'd find out tomorrow. Morning came too fast. Emily woke up disoriented, forgetting where she was until she saw the view of Central Park through floor-to-ceiling windows. For a moment, she thought maybe she'd dreamed the entire previous night. Then she saw her waitress uniform hanging in the bathroom, still slightly damp, and knew it was all real. Maria knocked on the door at 8:30 with coffee and what looked like a complete breakfast spread. Alexander says to take your time. Sophie's having her breakfast. She's a good kid, but she's shy around new people. Don't take it personally if she doesn't warm up right away. Does she know about Vanessa? Maria's face darkened. She knows the wedding is canceled. Alexander told her last night that Vanessa wasn't going to be part of their lives anymore. Sophie seemed more relieved than upset, if I'm being honest. She didn't like her? Sophie's a smart kid. She knew something was wrong, even if she couldn't name it. Maria set down the coffee tray. Kids always know. Emily showered and put on the clothes Maria had left out, jeans and a simple sweater that somehow fit perfectly despite being borrowed. When she emerged from the guest room, she could hear voices from somewhere deeper in the apartment. A child's voice, high and clear. But why can't I wear the purple dress to school? It's my favorite. Because it's February and 35 degrees outside. You'll freeze. Alexander's voice, patient but firm. I'll wear a coat. A coat won't help when your legs turn into icicles. My legs are very warm legs. They don't turn into icicles. Emily found herself smiling as she followed the voices to the kitchen. The room was enormous, all white marble and stainless steel, with windows overlooking the city. At the breakfast bar sat a little girl with dark hair pulled into a slightly crooked ponytail, wearing pajamas covered in stars. Sophie Hayes looked up when Emily entered, her gray eyes, her father's eyes, going wide. "Who are you?" she asked. Not rude, just curious. "This is Emily," Alexander said, glancing up from where he was attempting to convince his daughter to eat something other than chocolate cereal. "She's a friend of mine. Emily, this is Sophie." "Hi," Emily said, suddenly nervous. She'd thought saving Alexander from fraud was intimidating. Somehow this was worse. Sophie studied her with an intensity that was unsettling in a 7-year-old. "Are you Daddy's new girlfriend?" "Sophie," Alexander started. "It's okay," Emily interrupted. She walked over and sat down at the breakfast bar, meeting Sophie's eyes. "No, I'm not his girlfriend. I'm just someone who helped your dad with something last night." "Helped how?" "I told him something important that he needed to know." Sophie considered this. "Was it about Vanessa?" The kitchen went quiet. Alexander set down the cereal box. "Sophie, we talked about this. I didn't like her," Sophie announced, looking at Emily rather than her father. She smiled too much and her hugs felt like she was hugging a coat rack instead of a person. Also, she told me that horses were dirty and I shouldn't want to ride them because it wasn't ladylike. That's a dumb thing to say. Despite everything, Emily laughed. That is a pretty dumb thing to say. Right? Sophie grabbed a piece of toast. So if you help Daddy get rid of Vanessa, you must be nice. I'm not sure it works that way. It does in my head. Sophie tilted her head, still studying Emily. You look sad. The observation hit Emily harder than expected. I do? Yeah, around the eyes, like when Daddy thinks I'm not looking and he gets all quiet. Sophie took a bite of toast. Are you sad? Emily glanced at Alexander, who looked like he wanted to intervene but wasn't sure how. Sometimes, Emily admitted. But that's okay. Everybody feels sad sometimes. Daddy says Mom was sad before she died. He says it wasn't her fault, and it wasn't my fault. And sometimes people get sick in ways we can't see. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Alexander's face had gone completely blank. Sophie, that's not... We don't need to... It's true though, right? Sophie looked at her father. You said I could always talk about Mom, that it was healthy to remember her. I did. I do. It is. Alexander looked lost. I just don't want to upset Emily. I'm not upset, Emily said quietly. And she wasn't. She was heartbroken, watching this little girl carry grief she was too young to understand, but she wasn't upset. What was your mom's name? Sarah. Sophie's voice got smaller. I don't remember her much, just pictures and the stories Daddy tells me, but he says that's okay too. It is okay, Emily said. My dad died 2 years ago, and some days I can barely remember his voice, and that scares me. But then I'll remember something small, like how he always burned toast or how he sang off key in the car, and it's enough. Sophie's eyes went wide. Your dad died too? Yeah. Did he get sick like my mom? He did. Sophie was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she slid off her breakfast stool and walked over to Emily. Without warning, she wrapped her small arms around Emily in a hug that felt nothing like hugging a coat rack. I'm sorry your dad died, Sophie whispered. Emily's throat closed up. She hugged the little girl back, careful not to hold on too tight. I'm sorry about your mom, she whispered back. When Sophie pulled away, her eyes were shiny, but she was smiling slightly. I like you better than Vanessa, she announced. Sophie, Alexander tried again. It's true. Emily's nice, and she doesn't say horses are dirty, and she understands about sad. Sophie climbed back onto her stool. Can she stay for breakfast? She's already staying for breakfast. I mean, can she stay longer than breakfast? Alexander and Emily locked eyes across the kitchen. There was a question in his gaze, and Emily realized this was the moment, the decision point. She thought about her apartment in Queens, about job hunting and rent anxiety and eating ramen alone. Then she looked at Sophie, who was watching her with hope that was almost painful to witness. Would you like me to stay longer? Emily asked the little girl. Sophie nodded enthusiastically. Yes, we could watch movies and you could help me with my homework and maybe we could go to the park and... Slow down, Alexander said, but he was almost smiling. Emily has her own life. She can't just... Actually, Emily interrupted, I'm currently between jobs, so my schedule is pretty flexible. Alexander's eyebrows raised. Between jobs? Got fired last night, remember? Right. The whole saving me from destruction thing. He poured himself more coffee. How inconsiderate of them. Completely unreasonable, Emily agreed. Sophie looked between them, confused. Why did you get fired for helping Daddy? Because grown-ups make weird decisions sometimes, Emily said. That's true. Grown-ups are weird. Sophie finished her toast. So can you stay, please? Emily took a deep breath. How about this? I'll stay today, and we'll see how it goes. Does that work? Yes! Sophie pumped her fist in the air. Can we go to the park? After school, Alexander said firmly, which you're going to be late for if you don't get dressed. Purple dress is still a no, but you can pick anything else. Sophie grumbled but slid off her stool and headed toward her room. At the doorway, she turned back. Emily, will you be here when I get home from school? The question was asked casually, but Emily could hear the anxiety underneath. This was a kid who'd learned that people disappeared. I'll be here, Emily promised. Sophie grinned and vanished down the hallway. The kitchen felt very quiet after she left. She's great, Emily said finally. She's the only thing I haven't completely screwed up. Alexander refilled Emily's coffee without asking. So, you met Sophie. What's your answer? You're really serious about this? The fake wife thing? I'm really serious. And you trust me? Someone you met 12 hours ago? I trust that you care about Sophie. I saw your face when she hugged you. That wasn't fake. He sat down across from her. Everything else we can figure out as we go. Emily wrapped her hands around the warm coffee mug. What would it actually involve? Day to day? Living here. Appearing at public events as my wife. Being there for Sophie when she needs someone who isn't me or Maria. He pulled out his phone, started scrolling. There'll be a media blitz when we announce our relationship. Reporters, photographers, probably some nasty coverage questioning why I moved on so fast from Vanessa. But my PR team will handle most of that. When would we announce it? 2 weeks. Gives us time to get the contract finalized and prep you for what's coming. He looked up. I won't lie to you, Emily. It's going to be intense. People will dig into your past, criticize everything about you, compare you to Vanessa constantly. If that's not something you can handle, I can handle it, Emily said, more confidently than she felt. You sure? No. But I'm sure that Sophie needs stability, and you need help, and I need... She stopped. What do you need? Alexander asked quietly. Emily looked out the window at Central Park, at the city that had chewed her up and spit her out for 2 years. I need to stop feeling powerless, she said. I need to do something that matters instead of just surviving, even if it's temporary, even if it's fake. Alexander nodded slowly. Okay then. Okay then what? Okay then, Emily Carter. He held out his hand across the breakfast bar. Welcome to the most insane arrangement of your life. Let's fake a marriage. Emily stared at his hand. This was crazy. This was absolutely, completely crazy. She shook it anyway. One condition, she said. Name it. Sophie doesn't know it's fake. As far as she's concerned, we're real. I won't lie to her about other stuff, but I won't make her feel like she's part of some business arrangement. Alexander's grip tightened slightly on her hand. Agreed. They sat there for a moment, hands clasped across a breakfast bar in a penthouse overlooking Central Park. Two broken people making a deal that would either save them both or destroy whatever was left. So, Emily said finally. What now? Alexander released her hand and stood up. Now I call my lawyers and start the paperwork. You call whoever you need to call and let them know you're disappearing for a year. And then we figure out how to convince New York City that we're madly in love. No pressure, Emily muttered. None at all. He headed toward his office, then paused. Emily? Yeah? Thank you. For Sophie, for this, for all of it. Ask me again in a year, Emily said. See if I still think this was a good idea. Alexander almost smiled. Deal. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Lawyers descended with contracts that Emily had to read 4 times before understanding. She was assigned a stylist named Victoria, who took one look at Emily's queen's wardrobe and literally shuddered. There were meetings with Alexander's PR team, media training sessions where they taught her how to smile for cameras and deflect intrusive questions. And through it all, there was Sophie. The little girl had latched onto Emily with an intensity that was both touching and terrifying. She wanted Emily to help with homework, watch movies, read bedtime stories. She talked constantly about school, about her friends, about the horse riding lessons she desperately wanted. Vanessa said horses were for country people, Sophie explained one night as Emily tucked her in. But you like horses, right? I've never actually been near a horse, Emily admitted. Sophie's eyes went wide. Never. Never. I grew up in Queens. Not a lot of horses in Queens. We should fix that. Daddy could take us to a stable. He knows how to ride. Mom taught him before I was born. Emily smoothed Sophie's hair back from her forehead. Maybe. We'll see. That's what grown-ups say when they mean no. Sometimes. But sometimes it really means we'll see. Sophie yawned, fighting sleep. Emily, are you going to leave like Vanessa did? The question punched Emily in the chest. What? Vanessa was here and then she wasn't. People do that. They leave. Sophie's voice got smaller. Are you going to leave? Emily thought about the contract sitting on Alexander's desk, about the 1-year timeline, about the fact that yes, eventually she would leave, but not like Vanessa. Not suddenly, not cruelly. I'm not going anywhere right now, Emily said carefully, and I promise that if I ever do have to go, we'll talk about it first. Okay? No surprises. Sophie studied her face, looking for lies. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her because she nodded. Okay. Good night, Emily. Good night, Sophie. Emily was almost to the door when Sophie spoke again. I think Daddy likes you. He smiles more when you're here. Emily's hand froze on the doorknob. He does? Yeah, small smiles, but smiles. He hasn't done that in a long time. Emily didn't know what to say to that, so she just turned off the light and closed the door quietly. Alexander was in his office, buried in paperwork. He looked up when Emily knocked. She asleep? Finally, she fights it like sleep is the enemy. Every single night. He set down his pen. How are you holding up? Victoria said the dress fitting was intense. Your stylist hates me. Victoria doesn't hate you. She's just aggressively passionate about fashion. She called my posture tragically working class. Alexander winced. Yeah, okay, she might hate you a little, but she's the best in the city. If anyone can prepare you for the media circus, it's her. Emily sat down in one of the leather chairs across from his desk. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you really pick me? And don't say it's because I warned you about Vanessa. You could have hired an actress, a model, someone who actually knows how to be in the spotlight. Instead, you picked a waitress who can barely walk in heels. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Then he closed the folder he'd been working on and met her eyes. You want the truth? Yes, because you're the first person in 7 years who looked at Sophie like she mattered more than my bank account. His voice was steady, but there was emotion underneath. Every woman I've dated since Sarah died, every potential partner, they all said the right things about Sophie. But you could see it in their eyes. She was an obstacle, something to tolerate to get to me. That's horrible. That's reality when you're a single dad with money. He leaned back in his chair. But you? You met her for 5 minutes, and the first thing you did was promise you'd be there when she got home from school. You didn't ask about my company or my net worth or what you'd get out of this. You just cared about a 7-year-old kid. Emily looked down at her hands. She reminds me of me. After my dad died. That look in her eyes like she's waiting for the next bad thing to happen. Yeah, I know that look too. Alexander stood up, walked to the window overlooking the city. Sarah's death broke something in me. I threw everything into work and Sophie because it was easier than feeling anything. And then I met Vanessa and she seemed safe, uncomplicated. I didn't love her, but I thought maybe that was better. Love got me hurt before. So you were going to marry someone you didn't love? I was going to marry someone who couldn't destroy me. He turned back to face her. Turns out I was spectacularly wrong about that. What about Sophie's mom, Sarah? What was she like? Alexander's face did something complicated. She was brilliant, funny, an environmental lawyer who cared more about saving wetlands than making money. We met at a conference, got married too fast, had Sophie even faster. He stopped. And then she got postpartum depression that turned into something darker. I tried to help, got her doctors, therapists, medication. Nothing worked. She died when Sophie was 6 months old. Emily's chest tightened. I'm so sorry. It was 7 years ago. You'd think it would hurt less by now. Grief doesn't work on a timeline. No, it doesn't. He walked back to his desk but didn't sit down. Anyway, that's why I picked you, because you understand loss, and because I trust you with the only thing that actually matters to me. Sophie. Sophie, he confirmed. They stood there in his office, two people carrying grief like luggage they couldn't set down, about to embark on the most elaborate lie Emily had ever been part of. The announcement is tomorrow, Alexander said. Are you ready? Emily thought about the media training, the contracts, the wardrobe Victoria had assembled. Thought about Sophie's small voice, asking if she was going to leave. No, she said honestly, but let's do it anyway. Alexander almost smiled. That's the spirit. The press conference was held at Hayes Technologies headquarters. Emily wore a dress Victoria had chosen. Elegant but not flashy, expensive but not ostentatious. Her hair had been styled by someone who cost more per hour than Emily used to make in a week. She looked like someone who belonged next to Alexander Hayes. She felt like an imposter. Remember, Alexander murmured as they waited backstage. Smile, but not too much. Answer questions simply. And if anything gets too invasive, I'll shut it down. Got it. Smile. Simple answers. Let you be the hero. You're doing great already. I haven't done anything yet. You're here. That's enough. A PR assistant signaled them. Time to go. They walked out together, Alexander's hand on the small of Emily's back. Cameras flashed like strobing lightning. Reporters shouted questions before they even reached the podium. Alexander held up a hand and the room quieted. Thank you all for coming. I'll keep this brief. As many of you know, my engagement to Vanessa Beaumont ended recently due to circumstances that are now part of an ongoing federal investigation. I won't be commenting on that situation out of respect for the legal process. More camera flashes. More shouted questions. However, Alexander continued, his hand still steady on Emily's back, I'm here today to introduce you to someone very important to me. Emily Carter and I have been seeing each other quietly for the past few weeks. In light of recent events, we've decided to stop hiding. The room erupted. Questions flew from every direction. Mr. Hayes, how did you meet? Emily, where are you from? Is this a rebound relationship? When did the relationship start? Alexander fielded the questions with practiced ease, revealing just enough to satisfy curiosity while maintaining privacy. Emily smiled when appropriate, nodded, played her part. She was doing okay until one reporter stood up in the back. Miss Carter, some sources say you were a waitress at the Metropolitan. Is it true you met Mr. Hayes while serving him dinner with his former fiancée? The room went completely silent. Emily's throat went dry. This was it. The moment where her working-class background became a scandal, where she became the gold digger, the opportunist, the waitress who seduced a billionaire. She felt Alexander tense beside her. Yes, Emily said, her voice clearer than she expected. I was a waitress at the Metropolitan. I worked there for 4 months to pay rent while trying to get back on my feet after my father died. I'm not ashamed of that work. And yes, that's where Alexander and I first met. The reporter smirked. Some might say the timing is suspicious. Breaking up with one woman and immediately getting involved with a waitress who served you. Some people will say a lot of things, Emily replied. I can't control that. What I can tell you is that I'm not here for Alexander's money or his company. I'm here because I care about him and his daughter. If that makes me suspicious in your eyes, that's your problem, not mine. Alexander's hand tightened slightly on her back, not restraining, supporting. One more question, he announced. A woman in the front row stood. Mr. Hayes, given the traumatic end to your previous engagement, why go public with a new relationship so quickly? Alexander looked at Emily, and for just a moment something flickered in his eyes that looked almost real. Because Emily reminds me that not everyone has ulterior motives, he said quietly. Because she's shown me that it's possible to trust again, and because my daughter deserves to see what genuine kindness looks like. He wasn't reading from a script. This wasn't the smooth PR answer his team had prepared. This was just Alexander, broken and honest and trying. Emily's heart did something complicated in her chest. Thank you all, Alexander said. That's all for today. They walked off the stage together, cameras still flashing, reporters still shouting. Backstage, Alexander's PR team descended, analyzing every word, every expression, already spinning the narrative for maximum positive impact. Emily barely heard them. She was too busy trying to figure out why Alexander's words had sounded so real, and why she'd almost believed them herself. The headlines hit the next morning like bombs going off across every news platform in the city. Billionaire's waitress. Alexander Hayes moves on with former restaurant employee from tables to towers. The Cinderella story. Nobody asked for a seat it for gold digger or genuine. Hayes's new girlfriend raises eyebrows. Emily sat at the breakfast bar, staring at Alexander's tablet as he scrolled through the coverage. Each headline felt like a punch to the stomach. Don't read them, Alexander said, pouring coffee. My PR team predicted this. It'll die down. When? After they've completely destroyed my reputation? Emily pushed the tablet away. They're calling me a gold digger, a social climber. One article literally used the phrase opportunistic server who landed a billionaire. They called Vanessa a philanthropic socialite for 2 years. The media doesn't know anything. He set a mug in front of her. Drink. Sulking on caffeine is slightly more productive than sulking without it. I'm not sulking. You're definitely sulking. Sophie wandered into the kitchen, still in her pajamas, dragging a stuffed elephant. Why is Emily sad again? I'm not sad, Emily lied. Sophie climbed onto the stool next to her and studied her face with that unnerving 7-year-old intensity. Your sad face and your not sad face are different. This is your sad face. Alexander hid a smile behind his coffee mug. Fine, Emily admitted. I'm a little sad. Some people wrote mean things about me in the newspaper. What kind of mean things? Sophie, eat your breakfast, Alexander interjected. I'm asking a question. You said questions are important. I said educational questions are important. This is educational. I'm learning about mean newspaper people. Sophie turned back to Emily, waiting. Emily sighed. They said I'm only with your dad because he has money, that I don't really care about him or you. I just want to be rich. Sophie frowned. But that's not true. You were sad before you even met Daddy. I remember. Your eyes looked sad that first morning. You remember that? I remember everything. Sophie grabbed a piece of toast. Newspaper people are dumb. Daddy says don't listen to dumb people. I don't think I phrased it exactly like that, Alexander said. You said ignore the noise and focus on what matters. Same thing. Sophie took a bite of toast, then added with her mouth full, Emily matters. So the newspaper people can shut up. Emily felt something warm unfold in her chest. Thank you, Sophie. You're welcome. Can we go to the park after school? If the weather holds, Alexander said, already checking his phone. I have meetings until 4. Emily can take me. Both adults looked at the little girl. By ourselves? Emily asked. Maria can come too if you're scared, but you're a grown-up. You can take me to the park. Sophie said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Alexander's face did something complicated. Sophie, Emily might not be comfortable. I'm comfortable, Emily interrupted. If it's okay with you, I'd love to take Sophie to the park. Alexander looked between them, clearly torn between his protective instincts and the hope in his daughter's eyes. Maria goes with you, he said finally, and you text me every 30 minutes. Every 30 minutes? Emily raised an eyebrow. That seems excessive. That's the deal. Take it or leave it. I'll take it, but only because Sophie's giving me puppy dog eyes. Sophie grinned triumphantly and went back to her toast. Later, after Alexander left for the office and Sophie was at school, Emily found herself alone in the penthouse with Maria. The housekeeper was folding laundry in a way that suggested she had opinions she was trying not to voice. Just say it, Emily said finally. Maria looked up, feigning innocence. Say what? Whatever you're thinking. You've been making that face for 20 minutes. I don't make faces. You're making one right now. Maria set down the towel she was folding and fixed Emily with a look that probably made world leaders confess their secrets. You care about her, Sophie. It wasn't a question. Emily nodded anyway. Yeah, I do. And Alexander? Emily's stomach twisted. That's more complicated. Love usually is. I'm not in love with him. This whole thing, it's just... Emily stopped, remembering that Maria didn't know about the arrangement. As far as she knew, Emily and Alexander were a real couple. It's new. We're still figuring it out. Maria studied her for a long moment. You're a terrible liar. Excuse me? Whatever this is, whatever arrangement you and Alexander have, it's not what you're telling the world. Maria picked up another towel. But I don't care about that. What I care about is that you're good to Sophie, and you are. So the rest? Not my business. Emily felt her face flush. How did you... I've worked for Alexander for 5 years. You think I don't know when something's off? Maria's expression softened slightly. But off doesn't mean bad. You're here for the right reasons, even if the situation is weird. That's more than I can say for Vanessa. Did you hate her? Hate is a strong word. I deeply mistrusted her and may have fantasized about accidentally spilling hot coffee on her expensive dresses. Maria smiled grimly. Sophie cried after Vanessa's visits, said she made her feel invisible. So no, I wasn't sad when that wedding got canceled. Emily thought about Sophie's small arms wrapped around her in a hug, about the trust in her eyes when she asked if Emily would be there after school. I won't hurt her, Emily said quietly. Whatever else happens, I won't hurt Sophie. Good, because if you do, you'll have to deal with me, and I'm significantly scarier than any newspaper headline. Emily believed her. The park was chaos in the best possible way. Kids screaming on playground equipment, dogs chasing tennis balls, joggers weaving through crowds with expressions of intense determination. Sophie dragged Emily toward the swings, chattering nonstop about her day at school. And then Marcus said that girls couldn't be astronauts, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, because I showed him pictures of Sally Ride and Mae Jemison, and he still didn't believe me. Boys are dumb sometimes. Sometimes everyone's dumb, Emily said, helping Sophie onto a swing. It's not gender-specific. What's gender-specific mean? It means stupidity is an equal opportunity employer. Sophie giggled. You say funny things. Vanessa never said funny things. She said things like, sit up straight, and ladies don't run, and boring stuff. Emily pushed the swing gently. Well, I think ladies can do whatever they want, including running. And being astronauts? Especially being astronauts. Sophie pumped her legs, gaining height. When I grow up, I'm going to live on Mars and have a horse farm. Do you think horses can live on Mars? I think if anyone can figure out how to make that work, it's you. They spent an hour at the playground. Sophie made friends with 3 other kids within minutes, organizing an elaborate game that seemed to involve pirates and dragons and a lost treasure that changed locations every 5 minutes. Emily sat on a bench with Maria, watching the chaos unfold. She doesn't usually warm up to people this fast, Maria commented. Took her 6 months to really talk to me when I first started. But with you? Instant. Maybe she needed someone who understood what it's like to lose a parent. Maybe. Or maybe she's just a good judge of character. Maria stood up. I'm getting coffee from that cart. Want anything? I'm good, thanks. I'm good. Maria headed off, leaving Emily alone on the bench. She pulled out her phone to text Alexander the required update and found 17 missed calls from a number she didn't recognize. Before she could investigate, someone sat down next to her. Emily looked up, expecting another parent. Instead, she found herself face to face with a woman in expensive sunglasses and a coat that probably cost more than Emily's old car. You're her, the woman said. The waitress. Emily's defenses went up immediately. And you are? Someone who knows Alexander Hayes better than you ever will. The woman removed her sunglasses, and Emily's stomach dropped. She'd seen this face before, in the tabloids, in the background of photos from Alexander's past. You're Rebecca Lawson, Emily said. Rebecca smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. So he mentioned me. I'm flattered. He hadn't. Emily had seen her in a magazine article about Alexander's social circle. Rebecca Lawson, venture capitalist, society fixture, and according to the article, one of Alexander's close friends since college. What do you want? Emily asked. To give you some friendly advice. Rebecca crossed her legs, utterly at ease. Alexander's been through a lot, losing Sarah, raising Sophie alone, and now the Vanessa situation. He's vulnerable right now, susceptible to making poor decisions. And you think I'm a poor decision. I think you're a waitress who saw an opportunity and took it, which honestly, I can't entirely blame you, but you need to understand something. Rebecca leaned closer. Alexander doesn't love you. He's using you to rebuild his image after the Vanessa disaster, and when he doesn't need you anymore, you'll be discarded just as quickly as you were picked up. Emily forced herself to stay calm. If you're such close friends, why are you telling me this instead of talking to him? Because Alexander won't listen. He's stubborn. But you? You strike me as someone practical, someone who understands that fairy tales don't happen to girls from Queens. Rebecca pulled out her phone, showed Emily a photo. This is Alexander and me at a charity gala 3 months ago. Do you see how he's looking at me? Emily looked. Alexander and Rebecca stood close together, him in a tux, her in a gown that probably cost 6 figures. They looked comfortable together, familiar. We've known each other for 15 years, Rebecca continued, been through everything together. And once this little charade with you runs its course, Alexander will remember where he actually belongs, with someone from his world, someone who understands him. Emily's hands clenched into fists. Does he know you feel this way? Alexander knows exactly how I feel. We have an understanding. Then why isn't he with you instead of me? Something flickered across Rebecca's face. Anger, maybe, or hurt. Timing, she said smoothly, but timing changes, and when it does, you'll be the one standing in the rain wondering what happened. She stood up, put her sunglasses back on. Enjoy it while it lasts, Emily, but don't get too comfortable. You're temporary. You've always been temporary. She walked away before Emily could respond, disappearing into the crowd of parkgoers. Emily sat there, trembling slightly, Rebecca's words echoing in her head. You're temporary. You've always been temporary. Which was true. She had a 1-year contract. This was fake. She knew that. So why did Rebecca's words feel like a knife? Emily, watch this. Sophie's voice cut through the spiral. The little girl was hanging upside down from the monkey bars, grinning wildly. Emily waved, forced to smile. Very impressive. Don't fall. I never fall. Maria returned with coffee, took one look at Emily's face, and frowned. What happened? Nothing, just someone recognized me from the news coverage. Someone rude? Very rude. Maria sat down, handed Emily a coffee she hadn't asked for. Drink, and ignore them. People love tearing down what they can't have. Emily wrapped her hands around the warm cup, watching Sophie play, trying not to think about Rebecca's perfectly manicured nails or the familiarity in that photo or the possibility that everything she'd started to feel might be completely one-sided. Because that was the problem. Somewhere between press conferences and breakfast conversations and Sophie's bedtime stories, Emily had started to forget this was fake. Had started to feel like maybe, possibly, this could become something real. And Rebecca had just reminded her how stupid that was. That evening, Alexander came home late, looking exhausted. He found Emily in the kitchen, supposedly reviewing the schedule Victoria had sent for the week, but actually just staring at her laptop without seeing anything. Sophie asleep? He asked, loosening his tie. An hour ago. She wanted to wait up for you, but crashed around 8:30. Damn, I promised I'd read to her tonight. He slumped into a chair. Bad day. The board is panicking about the Vanessa scandal. Stock dropped 3 points. 2 major investors are making noise about pulling out. Emily closed her laptop. I'm sorry. Not your fault. They're just looking for excuses. He noticed the expression on her face. What's wrong? Nothing. Emily, what's wrong? She shouldn't ask. It was none of her business. This was a business arrangement, not a real relationship. But she asked anyway. Do you have feelings for Rebecca Lawson? Alexander's entire body went still. Where did that come from? She approached me at the park today, said you two have an understanding, that I'm temporary, and once this is over, you'll realize where you actually belong. She said that. Word for word, Alexander stood up, walked to the window, his jaw clenched so tight Emily could see the muscle jumping. Rebecca and I have known each other for a long time, since college. We dated briefly freshman year, stayed friends after. She's been a good friend, I thought. She showed me a photo from a gala. You looked... Emily stopped. I looked what? Comfortable with her. Close. Alexander turned around. We are close, or we were. But there's no understanding, no secret plan to get back together. Whatever Rebecca's selling, it's fiction. She seemed pretty convinced. Rebecca's wanted more than friendship for years. I've made it clear that's not going to happen. Apparently I wasn't clear enough. He walked back to where Emily sat. Is that what's been bothering you all evening? Thinking I'm with you as a placeholder until I can be with her? Emily looked down at her hands. It's stupid. This whole thing is fake anyway. Who you have feelings for shouldn't matter to me. But it does matter to you. It wasn't a question. Emily didn't answer. Alexander crouched down so he was eye level with her. Emily, look at me. She did. His gray eyes were intense, searching. I am not using you as a placeholder. I am not pining for Rebecca. And whatever understanding she thinks we have exists only in her imagination. His voice was quiet but firm. You're here because I trust you, because Sophie loves you, because you're the first person in years who's looked at my life and seen people instead of opportunities. We have a contract, Emily whispered. 1 year, then I leave. I know. So why does this feel... She stopped, unable to finish. Real? Alexander finished for her. Yeah, I've been wondering the same thing. They stared at each other in the kitchen of a penthouse apartment. 2 people who'd entered a business arrangement and somehow stumbled into something neither of them knew how to name. This is complicated, Emily said. Incredibly complicated. We should probably keep things professional. Absolutely. Neither of them moved. Alexander's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He stood up, checked the screen, and his expression went dark. "What is it?" Emily asked. "Message from my head of security." He showed her the screen. "Potential leak in clean energy project. Investigating source. Recommend immediate lockdown of sensitive files." Emily's stomach dropped. "A leak? What kind of leak?" "The kind that could destroy 6 months of work and cost the company millions." He was already dialing, pacing. "David, I just saw your message. What's the situation?" Emily couldn't hear the other end of the conversation, but she watched Alexander's face grow darker with each passing second. "How much was leaked?" Pause. "Christ. Okay, start damage control. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, ran his hand through his hair. "I have to go to the office." At 10 p.m., someone leaked proprietary information about our new solar panel design. If competitors get their hands on this before we file patents, we're finished. He grabbed his jacket. "I don't know when I'll be back." "Alexander, I'm sorry. I know this is... I'm sorry." He headed for the door, then stopped. "Emily? What Rebecca said? Don't believe her, please." Then he was gone, and Emily was alone in the too quiet penthouse, wondering how everything had gotten so messy so fast. The next 48 hours were a nightmare. The leak made headlines. Hayes Technologies suffers major security breach. Competitors circled like sharks, stock prices plummeted, and Alexander barely came home, spending endless hours at the office trying to contain the damage. Emily tried to maintain normalcy for Sophie's sake. School pickups, homework help, bedtime stories. But the little girl was smart enough to know something was wrong. "Is Daddy okay?" Sophie asked on the third night, after Alexander had called to cancel dinner for the second time. "He's just busy with work stuff," Emily said, tucking her in. "Is it bad work stuff?" "It's complicated work stuff." Sophie was quiet for a moment. "Is it my fault?" Emily's heart broke. "What?" "No, Sophie, why would you think that?" "Because things were good when you came, and now they're bad again. Maybe I jinxed it." "You didn't jinx anything. Sometimes bad things just happen, and they have nothing to do with you." Emily smoothed Sophie's hair back. "Your dad loves you more than anything in the world. You know that, right?" "I guess." "Not, I guess. Know it. Absolutely know it." Sophie nodded, but she didn't look convinced. She fell asleep holding Emily's hand, and Emily sat there long after, watching this little girl carry worries she was too young to understand. It was past midnight when Alexander finally came home. Emily was still awake, curled up on the couch, with a book she wasn't actually reading. He looked like death, suit wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. "You should be asleep," he said. "So should you." He collapsed onto the other end of the couch. "Can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see stock prices crashing and board members voting to remove me." "Is it that bad?" "It's worse. We found the source of the leak." He looked at her, and there was something broken in his expression. "It traced back to this apartment." Emily's blood went cold. "What?" "Someone accessed our secure server from an IP address registered to this penthouse 3 days ago, right around the time you would have been here alone." The implication hung in the air between them like poison gas. "You think I did it?" Emily whispered. "I don't want to think that." "But you're saying it anyway." Alexander closed his eyes. "The evidence points to someone in this apartment accessing files they shouldn't have access to. You, me, Maria, and Sophie are the only people here. So by process of elimination, it's me, the gold-digging waitress who clearly has an ulterior motive." Emily stood up, shaking. "That's what you think, isn't it? That Rebecca was right, that I'm using you." "Emily, no, don't." She backed away from the couch. "You know what the worst part is? I actually started to believe this could be real, that maybe you saw me as more than a convenient solution to your PR problem. But I'm just another Vanessa to you, aren't I? Someone to trust until the second things go wrong." "That's not fair." "Fair? You just accused me of corporate espionage. I didn't accuse you of anything. I told you what the evidence shows." "It's the same thing," Emily's voice cracked. "You know what? Rebecca was right. I am temporary, and I'm an idiot for forgetting that." She turned to leave, but Alexander caught her wrist. "Don't," he said quietly. "Don't what?" "Don't run. Not yet. Let me figure this out. Emily yanked her hand free. There's nothing to figure out. The evidence says I'm guilty, so I'm guilty. That's how this works in your world, right? Evidence trumps trust. That's not... It is. It absolutely is. She walked toward the guest room, then stopped. I'll stay until you find someone else. For Sophie's sake. But don't expect me to pretend this doesn't hurt. I'm not that good of an actress. She locked herself in the guest room and let herself cry for the first time since her father died. Because she'd done it again. Let herself hope. Let herself believe that maybe someone could want her for more than what she could provide. And once again, she'd been proven wrong. Morning came too fast. Emily washed her face, put on armor in the form of one of Victoria's perfectly chosen outfits, and went to make Sophie breakfast like nothing had happened. Alexander was already in the kitchen, looking like he hadn't slept at all. We need to talk, he said. Not in front of Sophie. She's still asleep. Then wake her up. I'm not doing this right now. Emily, please. Coffee or tea? She asked, her voice brittle. I'm making Sophie pancakes. Do you want any? Alexander stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You're making pancakes. Sophie likes pancakes on Thursdays. It's Thursday. After everything I said last night, you're doing my job. That's what this is, right? A job. She pulled out the mixing bowl with more force than necessary. So I'm going to do it. Make breakfast, take Sophie to school, smile for any cameras that show up, play the dutiful wife. Stop. Stop what? Stop pretending you don't care. Emily slammed the bowl on the counter. What do you want from me, Alexander? You want me to break down? Admit that I'm falling for you and this whole situation is destroying me? Fine. Consider it admitted. But it doesn't change anything. You think I leaked your files, so either prove I didn't or let me finish out this contract in peace. Before Alexander could respond, Sophie wandered into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. Why is everyone yelling? She asked. Both adults immediately shifted gears, forcing smiles that didn't reach their eyes. We're not yelling, sweetie, Emily said. Just talking about boring adult stuff. Want pancakes? With chocolate chips? Is there any other kind? Sophie climbed onto her stool, looking between Emily and her father with an expression too knowing for 7 years old. The breakfast was tense. Sophie chattered about school while Emily and Alexander avoided looking at each other. It felt like every other meal Emily had endured in her life where adults pretended everything was fine while the world burned around them. After Sophie left for school, Emily grabbed her coat. Where are you going? Alexander asked. For a walk. I need air. Emily, don't. Please, just don't. She made it to the elevator before the tears started again. Emily walked for 3 hours through Manhattan, her phone buzzing constantly with calls from Alexander that she ignored. The city felt different now, colder, more hostile. Every person who glanced at her felt like they were judging, recognizing her from the tabloids, wondering if the waitress had finally shown her true colors. She ended up in Queens, standing outside the building where she used to live. Mrs. Chen was sweeping the front steps, and when she saw Emily, her face split into a wide smile. Emily, look at you, all fancy now. I saw you on the news with that billionaire. Mrs. Chen leaned on her broom, eyes twinkling. You always were a good girl. I knew something good would happen for you. Emily felt her throat close up. Mrs. Chen, you here to visit? Your old apartment's been rented. Nice young couple, very quiet. But I can make tea if you want to come up. It was such a simple offer. Tea. Normal conversation. A reminder of who Emily used to be before penthouses and press conferences and fake marriages. I'd like that, Emily whispered. Mrs. Chen's apartment was exactly as Emily remembered. Cramped, cluttered, smelling like jasmine and old books. They sat at the tiny kitchen table, and Mrs. Chen poured tea into chipped mugs that were probably older than Emily. So, Mrs. Chen said, you going to tell me what's really wrong, or are we going to pretend you walked 3 hours in expensive shoes just to say hello? Emily wrapped her hands around the warm mug. How did you know something was wrong? I'm 83 years old. I've seen every kind of heartbreak there is. Mrs. Chen sipped her tea, waiting. Emily told her. Not everything, not the fake marriage contract or the business arrangement, but enough. About Alexander, about the accusations, about feeling like she'd been stupid to believe she could belong in his world. Mrs. Chen listened without interrupting. When Emily finally finished, the old woman was quiet for a long moment. My husband. He was rich man, Mrs. Chen said finally. Not billionaire rich, but comfortable. I was seamstress in Chinatown when we met. His family, they said same things. Gold digger, opportunist. Said I trap him. She smiled sadly. We were married 47 years before he died. And you know what? His family never stopped thinking I was after his money, even at his funeral. How did you stand it? I didn't stand it. I ignored it, because I knew the truth, and he knew the truth, and that was enough. Mrs. Chen reached across the table, patted Emily's hand. But here's the thing. You got to decide if this man worth fighting for. Not his money, not his lifestyle. Him, the person. Is he worth it? Emily thought about Alexander, about the exhaustion in his eyes when he came home late, about the way he smiled at Sophie's terrible jokes, about how he'd looked at Emily in his office and admitted he didn't know how to trust anymore. I don't know, she admitted. I thought I did. But now you scared, Mrs. Chen said, because caring about someone means they can hurt you. And you already been hurt enough, losing your daddy. Easier to run than risk more pain. I'm not running. You sitting in my kitchen instead of his. That's running. Emily opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Because Mrs. Chen was right. Her phone buzzed again. Alexander. Again. Maybe you should answer, Mrs. Chen suggested. Maybe I should finish my tea first. Mrs. Chen smiled. Stubborn, that's good. You need stubborn to survive in that world. But don't be so stubborn you lose something real because you too scared to fight for it. Emily stayed for another hour, letting Mrs. Chen's familiar presence ground her. When she finally left, the old woman hugged her tight. You better than you think you are, Mrs. Chen whispered. Don't let anybody convince you otherwise, not even yourself. The walk back to the penthouse felt longer than the walk away. Emily's feet hurt, her head ached, and she had no idea what she was going to say when she got there. But Mrs. Chen was right about one thing. Running solved nothing. The penthouse was quiet when Emily walked in. Maria was in the kitchen, and the look she gave Emily was pure relief. Thank everything holy. He's been losing his mind. Called the police, his security team, everyone. Maria pointed toward Alexander's office. He's in there. Has been since you left. Won't eat, won't sleep, just sitting there staring at his computer. Maria, whatever happened between you two, fix it. That man looks like he's about to break, and Sophie's picking up on all of it. She cried herself to sleep asking if you were coming back. The guilt hit Emily like a physical blow. Sophie cried? For an hour. Kept saying people always leave. Maria's expression softened slightly. Look, I don't know what's going on with this leak situation, but I know you, and I know you didn't do whatever they think you did. So go talk to him. Fight it out if you have to, but stop running. Everyone kept saying that. Stop running. Emily took a breath and walked toward Alexander's office. He was exactly where Maria said he'd be, sitting at his desk, staring at his laptop, looking like he hadn't moved in hours. When Emily knocked, his head snapped up, and the relief that flooded his face was almost painful to witness. Emily? He stood so fast his chair rolled backward. You're back. I didn't know if... I needed to think, Emily said, staying in the doorway. And walk. And remember who I was before all of this. I called the police. I thought something happened to you. My phone was on. You could have tracked me if you really wanted to. Alexander ran his hand through his already disheveled hair. I know, but you asked me not to follow you, so I didn't, even though it was killing me. They stared at each other across the office, and Emily felt the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on both of them. I didn't leak your files, she said quietly. I don't know how to prove that to you, and I don't know what evidence your security team found. But I didn't do it. I know. Emily blinked. What? I know you didn't do it. Alexander walked around his desk. I spent the last 8 hours going through every log, every access point, every piece of evidence, and I found something. He turned his laptop around. On the screen was a complicated spreadsheet full of IP addresses and timestamps and technical information Emily didn't understand. Someone spoofed the IP address from this apartment, Alexander explained. Made it look like the breach originated here when it actually came from somewhere else. It took my entire security team and 2 outside forensics experts to figure it out. So I'm cleared? You were never really under suspicion. Not by me. He looked at her, and there was something raw in his expression. I'm sorry. I should have said that immediately. Should have told you that I trusted you regardless of what the evidence suggested. But I was scared. Scared of what? Of being wrong again. Of trusting someone and having it blow up in my face. He sat on the edge of his desk. Vanessa destroyed my ability to trust my own judgment, and when that evidence pointed to this apartment, my first instinct was fear. Not of you being guilty, but of me being stupid enough to miss it again. Emily's anger started to crack. You should have told me that, instead of just throwing evidence at me like I was on trial. I know, I handled it terribly. I panicked and I hurt you, and I'm sorry. He looked at her. For what it's worth, even when the evidence looked damning, I didn't believe it. Not really. I just didn't know how to say that without sounding like an idiot who was ignoring facts because he was... He stopped abruptly. Because you were what? Emily prompted. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I was falling for you. And I didn't want to admit that because admitting it makes it real, makes it something that can hurt me. The floor seemed to tilt under Emily's feet. Alexander, I know this is supposed to be fake. I know we have a contract and a timeline, and this was never supposed to be anything more than a business arrangement. He stood up, started pacing. But somewhere between press conferences and breakfast conversations and watching you with Sophie, it stopped being fake for me. And that terrifies me. Emily's heart was hammering so hard she could hear it. You're falling for me. I'm already fallen. Past tense. Completely gone. He stopped pacing, faced her. And I understand if that changes things. If you want out of the contract, if this is too messy, if she... Shut up, Emily said. Alexander blinked. What? Just stop talking for a second. She walked into the office, closed the distance between them. You think you're the only one who's terrified? I've spent the last 3 hours walking through Queens trying to convince myself that I'm not in love with you. That this is just proximity and gratitude and the fact that Sophie's wrapped herself around my heart. But it's not. It's you. Emily. I'm not finished. You're arrogant and overprotective and you work too much and sometimes you treat me like I'm made of glass. But you're also kind and broken and trying so hard to be a good father, and you look at me like I matter, like I'm not just the waitress who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Her voice cracked. So yeah, I'm terrified too, because loving you means risking everything, and I've already lost so much. They stood there inches apart, both breathing hard. We're a mess, Alexander said finally. Completely. This is the worst possible time for this. My company's imploding, someone's actively trying to destroy me, and we're supposed to be faking a relationship. I know. But I don't want to fake it anymore. Neither do I. Alexander reached out, cupped her face in his hands. Tell me to stop. Tell me this is a terrible idea, and we should stick to the contract. It is a terrible idea, Emily whispered. Do it anyway. He kissed her. It was nothing like Emily had imagined. Not smooth or perfect or cinematic. It was desperate and messy and tasted like coffee and fear and hope all mixed together. Alexander's hands were shaking slightly where they held her face, and Emily's were fisted in his shirt, holding on like he might disappear. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. We're going to screw this up, he said. Probably. I'm going to make mistakes. Say the wrong thing. Work too much. And I'm going to be scared and defensive and occasionally want to throw expensive objects at your head. Sounds healthy. Emily laughed despite everything. We're insane. Completely. He kissed her again, softer this time. But I don't care. I'm tired of pretending I don't want this. A throat cleared behind them. They sprang apart to find Maria standing in the doorway, looking entirely too satisfied with herself. Sophie's awake, she announced. Asking for both of you. I told her Emily was back and she wants to show you both her school project. Maria, Alexander started. Don't Maria me. I've known this was coming for weeks. Just try not to traumatize the child with too much affection. She smiled. But for the record, about time. She disappeared back down the hallway, leaving Emily and Alexander staring at each other. She's terrifying, Emily said. She really is. Alexander took Emily's hand. Come on, let's go see what Sophie's created now. Last week it was a volcano that actually worked. I'm still finding baking soda in weird places. They found Sophie in her room, surrounded by poster board and markers and what appeared to be several pounds of glitter. Emily! Sophie launched herself at Emily's legs, hugging tight. You came back. I thought you left like Vanessa did. Emily crouched down, met Sophie's eyes. I told you, remember? If I ever have to leave, we'll talk about it first. No surprises. I went for a walk, but I came back. Promise you'll keep coming back? Emily glanced at Alexander, who was watching them with an expression that made her chest tight. I promise, she said. Now show me this project. Maria said there's glitter involved, which is both exciting and terrifying. Sophie grinned and launched into an explanation of her solar system diorama that included, for reasons Emily couldn't follow, a disco ball for Saturn and gummy bears representing the asteroid belt. They spent the next hour helping Sophie finish the project, getting glitter in their hair and arguing about whether Mars should be red or pink. It was normal and domestic, and absolutely nothing like the penthouse life Emily had imagined. It was perfect. Later, after Sophie was asleep and Maria had retired to her room, Emily and Alexander sat on the couch with glasses of wine. Neither of them was really drinking. We still need to figure out who actually leaked the files, Alexander said. The forensics team traced it to an IP address in Connecticut. They're working on narrowing it down. Connecticut, Emily repeated. That's oddly specific. My former attorney, David Thornton, has a house there, but he's in custody, so unless he's running cyber attacks from jail, it could be someone connected to him, someone who didn't get caught in the initial investigation. Emily set down her wine glass. What about Vanessa's mother, or Rebecca? Alexander's head snapped toward her. Rebecca? Why would you… Because she approached me in the park, told me I was temporary, and made it very clear she thinks you two belong together. Emily met his eyes. She has motive. Access to your social circle. Probably knows enough about your company to know what information would hurt you most. Rebecca's been my friend for 15 years. So is David Thornton. Alexander was quiet, processing. I'll have my security team look into it, discreetly. If it is her, what will you do? Whatever I have to do to protect Sophie, and you, and my company. He took Emily's hand. But I really hope you're wrong, because if Rebecca's involved, that means I've been surrounded by people trying to destroy me and I missed all the signs. You're not psychic, Alexander. You're just someone who wanted to believe the people close to you had your best interests at heart. Is that naive or human? Both, and neither is a crime. They sat in silence for a while, hands intertwined, watching the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. What happens now? Emily asked finally. With us, I mean. Do we tell people this is real? Change the contract? I have no idea. I didn't exactly plan for the fake relationship to become real. He turned to look at her. What do you want? Emily thought about it, about contracts and timelines and the complications of mixing business with emotion. I want to stop overthinking it, she said. I want to be with you because I want to be, not because a piece of paper says I have to be. And if that means ripping up the contract or rewriting it or just ignoring it completely, I don't care. You'd give up the financial security? The guaranteed payout? I'd give up a lot of things for the chance at something real. She squeezed his hand. I've spent 2 years surviving. I'm tired of just surviving. I want to actually live. Alexander pulled her closer, and Emily let herself lean against him, feeling his heartbeat under her cheek. Okay, he said quietly. We'll figure it out as we go. No more pretending. No more pretending, Emily agreed. The next morning, Alexander's security chief called with an update. They traced the leak to an IP address registered to a cafe in Greenwich, Connecticut. Security footage showed Rebecca Lawson at that cafe at the exact time the breach occurred. Alexander's face went completely blank when he heard the news. You're certain? He asked. 99%. The forensics team found remnants of the spoofing software on her laptop. We've handed everything over to the FBI. After the call ended, Alexander just sat there, staring at nothing. I'm sorry, Emily said quietly. I introduced her to Sophie, brought her to family dinners. She was at my wedding to Sarah. His voice was hollow. And the whole time, she was just waiting for an opportunity to destroy me because I wouldn't give her what she wanted. Some people can't handle rejection. It wasn't even really rejection. I never led her on, never promised anything. We dated for 3 months 15 years ago, and I thought we'd both moved on. He looked at Emily. How do you trust anyone after this? First Vanessa, now Rebecca. Everyone I've let close has tried to hurt me. Not everyone. Maria's been loyal. Your security team caught this. And I'm here. You're here because I hired you. I'm here because I choose to be here. The contract doesn't matter anymore, remember? Emily sat next to him. Alexander, you can't let their betrayal poison everything. That's what they want. They want you isolated and paranoid and unable to connect with anyone. Maybe they're right to want that. Maybe I'm a terrible judge of character. Or maybe you're someone who's been hurt and is trying to protect himself. She took his hand. But you can't protect yourself from everything. Sometimes you have to risk getting hurt to find something worth keeping. Alexander looked at their joined hands. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just someone who's been alone for a long time and doesn't want to be alone anymore. The FBI arrested Rebecca 3 days later. The media had a field day with it. Second Hades. Betrayal. Venture capitalists charged with corporate espionage. The tabloids loved the drama, spinning narratives about Alexander's inability to judge women's characters. Emily watched him weather the storm with a kind of grim determination. He did interviews, reassured investors, held emergency board meetings, and through it all he came home to Sophie and Emily, looking exhausted but somehow more present than before. It's like the worst parts getting exposed freed something in him, Maria observed one evening while they prepared dinner together. He's not hiding as much. Or maybe he just doesn't have the energy to hide anymore, Emily said. Either way, it's good for him. And for Sophie. Maria chopped vegetables with efficient precision. That girl has smiled more in the last month than she did in the entire year before you showed up. She's a great kid. She is. And she deserves a mother who sees that. Maria glanced at Emily. I'm not trying to pressure you, but that child loves you. Actually loves you, not the way she tolerated Vanessa. If you're going to be part of this family, you need to be all in. Emily thought about Sophie's laughter during breakfast, about bedtime stories and homework help, and the way the little girl had started calling her M like it was the most natural thing in the world. I'm all in, Emily said quietly. I think I have been since that first morning when she hugged me and said she was sorry about my dad. Maria smiled. Good, because you're already family, whether you have a piece of paper saying so or not. That night, Alexander found Emily in Sophie's room, reading aloud from a book about dragons and unlikely friendships. He leaned against the doorway, watching until Emily finished the chapter. One more, Sophie pleaded. It's already past your bedtime, Emily said. But the dragon just found out his best friend is actually a princess in disguise. I need to know what happens. Tomorrow. The story will still be here tomorrow. Sophie grumbled but settled into her pillows. Will you stay until I fall asleep? Of course. Alexander watched as Emily sat on the edge of Sophie's bed, humming something soft and familiar until the little girl's breathing evened out. When Emily finally stood to leave, Sophie's small voice stopped her. Em? I love you. Emily froze, turned back to the bed where Sophie was already half asleep. I love you too, kiddo, Emily whispered. In the hallway, Alexander was waiting. He didn't say anything, just pulled Emily into his arms and held her. She's never said that to anyone except me and Maria, he said quietly. Not even to Sarah. She was too young. Emily felt tears on her cheeks and didn't bother wiping them away. I didn't expect... I know, but she means it. Sophie doesn't say things she doesn't mean. He pulled back slightly, looked at Emily's face. This is real now. Completely real. Are you ready for that? Emily thought about the question. About commitment and family and all the ways this could still go wrong. I'm terrified, she admitted. But yes, I'm ready. Alexander kissed her forehead. Good. Because I'm about to ask you something, and I need you to know it has nothing to do with contracts or business arrangements or public image. What are you asking? He took a breath. Marry me. Actually marry me. Not for the press, not for Sophie, not for the company. Marry me because I love you, and I can't imagine my life without you in it. Emily's heart stopped. Alexander, I know it's fast, I know we're still figuring things out, But I spent 7 years being careful and guarded and alone, and I'm done with that. I want you. All of you. For real this time. Emily looked at this man who'd started as a stranger, became a business arrangement, and somehow turned into everything she didn't know she needed. Ask me again in 6 months, she said. Alexander's face fell. Oh, okay, I understand. Ask me again in 6 months because I want to say yes to Alexander Hayes the person, not Alexander Hayes the desperate man trying to hold his life together. She cupped his face in her hands. I love you, completely. But I also want us to have time to be real without crisis and investigations and everyone trying to destroy you. So ask me again in 6 months, when things have settled, and I'll say yes. Understanding dawned in his eyes. 6 months. 6 months? Emily confirmed. Think you can wait that long? For you? I'd wait forever. Let's not test that theory. 6 months is pushing it already. He laughed, and it was the first genuine laugh Emily had heard from him in days. Deal. 6 months from today, I'm asking again. And I'll say yes. They stood in the hallway outside Sophie's room, making promises about a future that was no longer fake, no longer a business arrangement, no longer anything but real. And for the first time since her father died, Emily felt like she'd finally found her way home. 6 months turned out to be both forever and no time at all. The media circus surrounding Rebecca's arrest eventually died down, replaced by newer scandals involving other wealthy people making terrible decisions. Vanessa's trial began in early spring, and Emily watched from the gallery as the woman who'd tried to destroy Alexander was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. David Thornton got 15. Rebecca, because she cooperated with prosecutors, and this was her first offense, got 7. Alexander sat beside Emily throughout the sentencing, his face expressionless. When it was over, he stood up without a word and walked out of the courtroom. Emily found him outside, leaning against the building, staring at nothing. You okay? She asked. I should feel something. Satisfaction, relief, vindication, something. He looked at her. But I just feel empty. Like I wasted years of my life on people who didn't deserve a single minute of my time. That's not a waste. That's learning who not to trust. Expensive lesson. Most worthwhile ones are. Emily took his hand. Come on. Sophie has a school performance tonight. We promised we'd be there. Right, the spring musical. He pushed off from the wall. What's she playing again? A tree. She's playing a tree. Specifically, a very enthusiastic tree who has 7 lines about photosynthesis and gets to wear a costume with actual leaves glued to it. Alexander almost smiled. She's going to be the best tree that stage has ever seen. Obviously, she's been practicing her tree stance for 2 weeks. They drove to Sophie's school, leaving the courthouse and the sentencing and all of it behind. And Emily realized that was what healing looked like. Not some dramatic moment of closure, but the simple act of choosing what mattered and letting the rest fade into background noise. Sophie was, predictably, the best tree the stage had ever seen. She delivered her lines about chlorophyll with such conviction that Emily heard someone in the audience whisper, "That kid's going places." Afterward, they took her for ice cream, and Sophie talked nonstop about the performance, the costumes, and how Marcus from her class forgot his lines, but she helped him by whispering them really loud. That's not actually helping, Alexander pointed out. It is if everyone can hear me and he remembers what to say, Sophie argued, chocolate ice cream on her chin. That's called stealing his spotlight. I prefer to think of it as collaborative theater, Sophie grinned at Emily. Right, Em? Emily tried not to laugh. I think the technical term is upstaging, but your heart was in the right place. See? Em gets it. Alexander shook his head, but he was smiling. Really smiling, the kind that reached his eyes and made him look years younger. They walked home through Central Park as the sun set, Sophie skipping ahead of them, still wearing part of her tree costume because she'd refused to take it off. Emily and Alexander followed hand in hand, and everything felt so normal that Emily sometimes forgot this had all started with a business arrangement and a desperate man making an impossible offer. 3 more months, Alexander said quietly. Emily knew exactly what he meant. 3 more months until the 6-month deadline, until he could ask again. Who's counting? She teased. Me? Daily. Sometimes hourly. That's not obsessive at all. I prefer to think of it as goal-oriented. He squeezed her hand, although if you wanted to waive the waiting period. Nice try. We agreed on 6 months. Can't blame a guy for asking. They caught up to Sophie at the fountain, where she was trying to convince a group of pigeons to participate in an impromptu performance of her school play. The pigeons were not cooperating. I don't think they speak tree, Emily said. Sophie huffed. Pigeons have no appreciation for art. Tragic, really, Alexander agreed solemnly. That night, after Sophie was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Emily found herself in Alexander's office. He was working late again, but differently now. Not with the desperate edge of someone drowning, but with the focused calm of someone who actually enjoyed what they were doing. Come to rescue me from spreadsheets? He asked, looking up. Come to tell you it's almost midnight and you promised you'd start sleeping more. Did I promise that? You did. Last week. After Sophie told you that you looked like a zombie. Alexander closed his laptop. In my defense, I'd been up for 36 hours dealing with the merger negotiations. Which is exactly why you need sleep. Emily walked over, started massaging his shoulders. He groaned. When's the last time you took a day off? Define day off. 24 consecutive hours where you don't check email, answer calls, or think about work. Never? Alexander, I'm a CEO. We don't get days off. You get whatever you decide you get. You own the company. She dug her thumbs into a knot near his shoulder blade, and he made a noise that was half pleasure, half pain. Sophie wants to go to that horse farm upstate next weekend, the one Maria's been talking about. The one where they let kids actually ride? That's the one. I already checked. They have beginner lessons, trail rides, the whole thing. We could make it a weekend trip. Alexander was quiet for a moment. A whole weekend, away from the office. Terrifying, I know. What if something happens? What if the investors need me? Then they'll call your second in command, who you pay an obscene amount of money specifically to handle things when you're not available. Emily stopped massaging, came around to face him. Alexander, you've been running yourself into the ground for 7 years. Take a weekend, breathe, show your daughter what horses look like in person instead of in pictures. He looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. You know what I love about you? My incredible massage skills? That too. But mainly, you give zero consideration to my excuses. Most people in my life just accept that I work too much. You actively call me on it. Someone has to. Otherwise, you'll work yourself to death, and Sophie will grow up thinking that's normal. Emily sat on the edge of his desk. Besides, I'm selfish. I want you around for a long time. Alexander stood up, moved to stand between her legs. How long are we talking? I don't know. 40, 50 years? Maybe longer if you start taking better care of yourself. 50 years with you sounds pretty good. Just pretty good? Incredible. Amazing. The best thing I can imagine. He kissed her softly. Okay. Horse farm. Next weekend. I'll even leave my laptop here. I don't believe you. I'll try to leave my laptop here. More believable. They went to the horse farm. Sophie was so excited she barely slept the night before, talking nonstop about what she'd name her horse if she could have one, and whether horses like chocolate, and if she could teach a horse to do math. Probably not, Alexander said, packing their bags. Horses are smart, but not math smart. You don't know that. Maybe nobody's tried properly. Emily caught Alexander's eye, and they both struggled not to laugh. The farm was beautiful. Rolling hills, white fences, horses grazing in fields that seemed to stretch forever. Sophie's eyes went huge when she saw them. They're so big, she breathed. They are, the instructor, a woman named Katie, who looked like she'd been born on a horse, agreed. But gentle. Want to meet one? Sophie nodded, suddenly shy. Katie brought over a brown mare named Daisy, and Sophie slowly reached out to touch the horse's nose. She's soft, Sophie whispered. She is, and she likes you. See how her ears are forward? That's horse for you're okay in my book. They spent the morning learning basic horsemanship. Sophie took to it immediately, fearless in a way that made Alexander visibly nervous. Emily held his hand while they watched their daughter trot around the ring on a patient pony named Butterscotch. She's fine, Emily murmured. She's 7 feet off the ground on an animal with its own brain. She's 3 feet off the ground on the world's most patient pony who's been doing this for 15 years. Still terrifying. But he was smiling, actually smiling, watching Sophie glow with joy. That afternoon, they went on a trail ride. Sophie rode Butterscotch, Emily got a gentle mare named Willow, and Alexander rode a horse named Duke, who seemed to sense his nervousness and responded by being aggressively calm. "This is weird," Alexander said as they rode through the forest. "I haven't been on a horse since Sarah and I went riding in Vermont. That was 8 years ago," Emily finished quietly. "She taught you." "Yeah, she loved horses. Grew up riding competitively." He looked ahead to where Sophie was chattering at Katie about whether horses could swim. She would have loved seeing Sophie like this. Emily had learned not to flinch when Alexander mentioned Sarah. Had learned that grief didn't disappear just because new love appeared. They coexisted, and that was okay. "Tell me about her," Emily said. "Really tell me. Not the sanitized version you give Sophie." Alexander was quiet for a long moment. The only sound the horse's hooves on the trail. "She was brilliant," he said finally, "and complicated. Passionate about environmental law, but struggled with depression her whole life. We met at a conference, and she argued with me for 2 hours about corporate responsibility before I realized I was completely in love with her." He smiled sadly. "We got married 6 months later. Everyone said it was too fast. They were probably right." "But you loved her." "I did. So much. And when she got pregnant with Sophie, she was so happy. I thought maybe having a baby would give her purpose, help with the depression." He stopped. "I was an idiot. Depression doesn't work like that. After Sophie was born, it got worse. She couldn't bond with the baby, could barely get out of bed. I got her help, but nothing worked. And then one day I came home, and she was just gone." Emily's chest tightened. "Alexander." "For a long time, I blamed myself. Thought if I'd done something different, been more attentive, found better doctors, something." He looked at her. "It took years of therapy to accept that Sarah's death wasn't my fault. That mental illness doesn't care how much money you throw at it or how much you love someone. Sometimes people are just broken in ways we can't fix. That's a hard thing to accept, the hardest, and it's why I was so guarded for so long. Why I almost married Vanessa even though I didn't love her. Because not loving someone meant they couldn't destroy me." He reached over, took Emily's hand even though they were both on horses, and it was awkward. "But you changed that. You made me want to risk it again." "I'm terrified I'll screw it up," Emily admitted. "That I'm not enough. That Sophie will grow up and realize I'm just some waitress who stumbled into her life and..." "Stop. You're not just anything. You're the person who saved me when I didn't know I needed saving. You're the person Sophie runs to when she's scared or happy or wants to share something important. You're the person who makes this feel like a home instead of just an expensive apartment." He squeezed her hand. "You're enough. You've always been enough." Up ahead, Sophie called back to them. "Are you guys being mushy? Katie says people on trail rides are always mushy." "We're having a meaningful conversation," Alexander called back. "That's adult code for mushy." Emily laughed, wiping tears she hadn't realized were falling. "She's got us figured out." "She really does." That night, they stayed at a bed and breakfast near the farm. Sophie fell asleep immediately, exhausted from riding and fresh air. Emily and Alexander sat on the porch, watching fireflies and drinking wine that was too sweet but somehow perfect. 2 months left, Alexander said. "You're still counting." "Every day." Emily leaned against him. "What if I said you don't have to wait?" He went very still. "What?" "What if I said yes now? What if the 6 months was arbitrary and we both know what we want and waiting is just waiting?" Alexander set down his wine so fast he almost knocked it over. "Emily, are you—" "I'm saying ask me. Right now. Ask me the question you've been waiting 6 months to ask." He turned to face her, and even in the dim porch light she could see the emotion in his eyes. "Marry me," he said. "Not because of a contract or public image or anything except that I love you. And Sophie loves you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Marry me for real." "Yes," Emily said. And it was the easiest answer she'd ever given. Yes to all of it. Alexander kissed her, and somewhere in the distance, Sophie's voice floated out from the bedroom window. "I knew it! Katie owes me $5. They broke apart laughing. "She was awake," Emily said. "She's always awake. I'm convinced she never actually sleeps." Alexander called toward the window. Sophie, go to bed. Can I be flower girl at the wedding? Yes. Can we have horses at the wedding? Absolutely not. Can Em officially be my mom now? Silence. Emily felt her heart stop. Alexander looked at her, and she saw the question in his eyes. This was her choice. Emily stood up, walked to the window where Sophie's small face was pressed against the screen. Yeah, kiddo, Emily said softly. If you want me to be, I'm officially your mom now. Sophie's grin could have lit up the entire farm. Best day ever. She disappeared from the window, and Emily heard her talking to her stuffed elephant about how she finally had a mom, and they were going to have horses, and everything was perfect. Alexander wrapped his arms around Emily from behind. You sure about this? Being a mom is permanent. No contract, no timeline. I'm sure. Emily turned in his arms. I've been sure since the morning she told me my eyes looked sad and hugged me anyway. I just needed to catch up to what I already knew. They went inside, checked on Sophie one more time. She was genuinely asleep now, stuffed elephant clutched tight, a smile still on her face. We're getting married, Alexander whispered. We're getting married, Emily confirmed. I should probably get you a ring. Probably, although I'm pretty sure Sophie will riot if she doesn't get to help pick it out. Valid point. He closed Sophie's door quietly. How do you feel about long engagements? How do you feel about short ones? I've already waited 7 years. I'm done waiting. Good, because I'm thinking October. Small ceremony, just family and people who actually matter. Maria will cry. Maria will absolutely cry, and probably tell us she knew this would happen all along. They planned the wedding over the next 3 months. Sophie was involved in every decision, from flowers to music to whether the cake should be chocolate or vanilla. She voted chocolate. Emily voted vanilla. Alexander suggested they get both, and Sophie announced he was the smartest dad in the world. The ceremony was held at the same bed and breakfast where Alexander had proposed. 50 people, mostly Alexander's business partners who'd become actual friends, Maria and her extended family, Mrs. Chen from Queens who cried through the entire thing, and Sophie who took her flower girl duties so seriously she created a spreadsheet of petal distribution patterns. Emily wore a simple dress that Victoria had somehow made elegant without being pretentious. Alexander wore a suit and looked so nervous that Sophie had to give him a pep talk before the ceremony. Just don't faint, she instructed. And when they ask if you take her to be your wife, say yes very loud so everyone can hear. And don't cry because then I'll cry and I'm trying to be professional. Noted, Alexander said, trying not to smile. And Daddy, I'm really glad you picked Em. She's much better than Vanessa. Much better, he agreed. The ceremony was short and perfect. Emily walked down the aisle alone because her father was gone and she didn't want anyone to replace him. When she reached Alexander, he was crying despite Sophie's instructions, and Emily was too, and the officiant had to wait a full minute for them to compose themselves enough to say their vows. I promise to love you even when you work too much, Emily said, to call you on it when you're being an idiot, to be there for Sophie and any other children we might have, to choose you every day even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Alexander's voice shook when it was his turn. I promise to trust you with everything I am, to let you see the broken parts and the scared parts and all the parts I usually hide, to be the partner you deserve, to be the father Sophie deserves, to build a life with you that's real and messy and absolutely nothing like the contract we started with. When the officiant pronounced them married, Sophie cheered so loud that people 3 farms over probably heard it. The reception was small and rowdy. Sophie gave a toast that was supposed to be 2 minutes but turned into 10, covering everything from how Emily made the best pancakes to how she'd helped Sophie understand division to how Daddy smiled more now. And most importantly, Sophie finished, raising her juice glass, Em teaches me that families don't have to be perfect. They just have to be real and love each other even when things are hard. So here's to my new mom and my old dad. I love you both even though you're super embarrassing sometimes. Everyone laughed and cried and toasted, and Emily looked around at these people who'd somehow become her family and thought about how far she'd come from that rainy night standing outside the Metropolitan. Later, dancing with Alexander under string lights, while Sophie twirled nearby with Maria, Emily thought about the journey that had brought her here, about grief and survival and the strange way life sometimes worked out, about how saving someone else had somehow saved her too. What are you thinking about? Alexander asked. How none of this was in my plan. A year ago, I was barely surviving. And now I'm married to a billionaire, mom to an amazing kid, and somehow part of something that actually matters. You always mattered. You just didn't know it yet. Maybe, or maybe I needed to stop surviving long enough to realize I could actually live. He pulled her closer. How's that working out for you? Pretty good so far. Just pretty good? Okay, incredible, but don't let it go to your head. Too late. Already completely gone to my head. Sophie crashed into them, nearly knocking them both over. Can we cut the cake now? I've been waiting forever, and Marcus's mom says I have the patience of a hummingbird on espresso, which I think is a compliment, but I'm not sure. Definitely not a compliment, Alexander said, still taking it as one. Cake? They cut the cake. Sophie got frosting in her hair. Maria cried again. Mrs. Chen told everyone the story of how Emily used to bring her tea when she was sick, and how she knew from the beginning that girl was special. And as the night wound down and guests started to leave, Emily stood with Alexander and Sophie watching the fireflies come out and thought about how sometimes the best things in life come from the moments when you stop trying to control everything and just let yourself fall. 3 years later, Emily stood in the boardroom of Hayes Technologies, presenting the final report on the foundation she and Alexander had built together. The Hayes Family Foundation, focused on helping single-parent families and children who'd lost parents too young. They'd helped 2,000 families in 3 years, set up grief counseling programs, created scholarship funds, given people the kind of support Emily wished she'd had when her father died. The board approved the budget expansion unanimously. After the meeting, Alexander found her in her office. Yes, her office. Turned out Emily was good at organizational management and even better at connecting with the families they served. She'd found her calling in helping others navigate the grief she'd survived. We did it, Alexander said, reading the approval email. We did it, Emily confirmed. You know what this means? That we can help twice as many families next year? Well, yes, but also that you're officially a bigger deal than me in this company. The board loves you more than they love me. That's because I bring them cookies. I knew there was a strategy. He sat on the edge of her desk. Speaking of strategy, Sophie wants to know if we're having another baby soon because apparently 7 of her classmates have younger siblings and she's feeling left out. Emily laughed. She presented you with a PowerPoint about this yesterday. I saw it. It had charts. She's my daughter. Of course it had charts. He took Emily's hand. But seriously, we've talked about it. How are you feeling? Emily thought about it. About the life they'd built. About Sophie, now 10 years old and brilliant and still as dramatic as ever. About the foundation and the work that mattered and the family they'd created from broken pieces. I'm feeling like maybe it's time, she said. Maybe our family could handle one more. One more what? Sophie's voice came from the doorway. Both adults turned to find her standing there in her school uniform, backpack on, looking entirely too pleased with herself. Were you eavesdropping? Alexander asked. I prefer to call it gathering intelligence. Sophie walked in, climbed onto the couch. So, baby sibling, are we doing this? We haven't decided yet, Emily said. But you're considering it. I can work with consideration. Sophie pulled out a tablet. I've prepared some additional materials about the benefits of larger family units. Of course you have, Alexander muttered. Including statistical data on sibling relationships and long-term family cohesion. Sophie swiped through her presentation. Also, I've picked out 3 potential names, all scientifically sound. Scientifically sound names, Emily repeated. I'm not explaining this to a baby named something ridiculous like Apple or North. Alexander tried not to laugh. Fair point. They went home together, the 3 of them, arguing about baby names and dinner options and whether Sophie's math homework was actually as impossible as she claimed. And Emily thought about how this was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not easy, but real. That night, after Sophie was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Emily found Alexander in their bedroom, staring at something on his phone. What's wrong? She asked. He turned the phone around. It was a news article. Vanessa had been released on early parole. Good behavior, apparently. How do you feel about that? Emily asked carefully. Honestly, I don't feel much of anything. He set the phone down. She's part of a past that doesn't matter anymore. She tried to destroy me, and instead, I found you. So really, I should probably send her a thank you card. That might be in poor taste. Probably, but the point stands. He pulled Emily into his arms. Everything she did, everything Rebecca did, all of it led me here. To you, to this family, to a life I actually want instead of one I'm just surviving. Emily rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. You know what I learned from all of this? What? That trust isn't about being certain someone won't hurt you. It's about choosing to be vulnerable anyway, about deciding that the possibility of real connection is worth the risk of pain. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just didn't notice because you were too busy being a workaholic billionaire. Fair point. He kissed the top of her head. I love you. In case that wasn't clear. It's pretty clear, but you can keep saying it. I love you. Still clear. Keep going. I love you. I love you. I love you. Okay, now you're overdoing it. Impossible. There's no overdoing it when it comes to you. 6 months later, Emily stood in a hospital room, holding a tiny baby girl, while Sophie peered over the edge of the bed with eyes full of wonder. She's so small, Sophie whispered. You were this small once, Alexander said. Lies. I was born sophisticated and fully formed. Emily laughed, exhausted and happy and completely overwhelmed. They'd named her Sarah, Sarah Chen Hayes, after Alexander's first wife and Mrs. Chen, the woman who'd given Emily tea and wisdom when she needed it most. Is it weird? Sophie asked, still staring at her baby sister. Naming her after my first mom? Alexander and Emily had worried about this, had discussed it extensively. Your first mom was an amazing person, Emily said carefully. She would have loved you so much if she'd been able to. Naming your sister after her isn't weird. It's honoring someone who should have been here. Sophie thought about that. Do you think she would have liked you, my first mom? I hope so. I think we would have been friends. I think so too. Sophie reached out, let baby Sarah grab her finger. I'm going to teach her everything, math and science and how to argue with Daddy about bedtime. She's going to be smart like us. Like us? Alexander protested. What am I, chopped liver? You're smart about business stuff. We're smart about important things. Emily caught Alexander's eye, and they both struggled not to laugh. This was their family, imperfect, complicated, built from loss and risk, and the decision to trust anyway. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Chen visited. She was 86 now, moved a little slower, but her eyes were just as sharp. Look at you, she said to Emily, holding baby Sarah. From my building in Queens to all of this. All of this is pretty overwhelming sometimes, Emily admitted. Overwhelming is good. Means you're living, not just surviving. Mrs. Chen rocked the baby gently. You remember what I told you about my husband's family thinking I was gold digger? I remember. I never told you the end of that story. You want to hear? Always. His mother, the one who hated me most, she got sick when we'd been married 20 years. Cancer. Her own children were too busy, too important. But I took care of her. Every day for 6 months. Fed her, bathed her, read to her. Mrs. Chen smiled. The day before she died, she held my hand and said, I was wrong about you. You married my son for love, and you stayed for love. That's all that matters. Did it feel good, being right? No. It felt sad. Because she wasted 20 years being angry when she could have known me. Mrs. Chen looked at Emily. Don't waste time proving yourself to people who decided not to see you. Just live your life. Love your family. That's the only proof that matters. Emily thought about that after Mrs. Chen left. About all the people who judged her, called her a gold digger, said she didn't belong. About how none of that mattered now. What mattered was Sophie, teaching her baby sister to count using complicated hand gestures. What mattered was Alexander, who still worked too much but came home every night. What mattered was the foundation they'd built, the families they'd helped, the difference they were making. What mattered was that Emily had stopped surviving and started living. 5 years after that, Emily stood in a lecture hall at Columbia University, giving a talk about grief support systems and single-parent family assistance. She'd gotten her degree, written a book, become someone people listened to. Not because she was married to Alexander Hayes, but because she had something to say. In the audience, Alexander sat with Sophie, now 15 and somehow even more dramatic, and Sarah, now 5 and already showing signs of being just as intense as her sister. After the lecture, a young woman approached Emily. She looked familiar, though Emily couldn't place her. "I was a waitress at the Metropolitan," the woman said. "I worked there when you did. I saw what happened that night with Alexander Hayes." Emily's stomach tightened. She rarely thought about that night anymore. "I just wanted to say thank you," the woman continued. "Because after you got fired for doing the right thing, I thought that's just how the world works. Rich people matter, and we don't. But then I followed your story, saw what you built, and it made me realize I could do more than just survive, too. I'm in nursing school now, because you showed me it was possible." The woman left before Emily could respond, disappearing into the crowd of students. Alexander appeared at her elbow. "You okay?" "Yeah, just someone from my old life reminding me where I came from." "Where we came from," he corrected. "I'm just as much that guy who almost married the wrong person as you are the waitress who saved him." "When did we become an inspirational story?" "When we decided to stop hiding and start being honest about how messy and complicated and real everything is." He took her hand. "Come on. The girls want pizza, and Sarah's threatening to start a protest if we make her eat healthy food. She's 5. Where did she learn about protests?" "Sophie showed her videos of labor movements. I've created a monster." They collected their daughters and went for pizza. Sophie complained about her teachers. Sarah sang a song about dinosaurs that made no scientific sense, but was undeniably catchy. Alexander stole food off Emily's plate. It was normal and chaotic, and absolutely nothing like the fairy tale the media wanted to write about them. It was better, because fairy tales were about perfect people having perfect lives. But real life was about broken people choosing each other anyway, about trust built slowly through 1,000 small moments, about love that wasn't effortless or magical, but was worked for and earned and worth every difficult conversation and hard decision. That night, lying in bed next to Alexander, Emily thought about the journey that had brought her here, about the scared waitress who'd overheard a conspiracy, about the billionaire who'd been betrayed one time too many, about 2 people who'd made a business arrangement and somehow found something real. "What are you thinking about?" Alexander asked. "How none of this makes sense, how we started with a contract and a timeline and completely logical reasons for being together, and somehow we ended up here." "You sound surprised." "I am surprised. Every day I'm surprised that this worked." "Want to know a secret?" He turned to face her. "Me too. I still wake up sometimes convinced this is temporary, that you'll realize you can do better and leave. I'm not going anywhere, I know, but the scared part of my brain doesn't always listen to the logical part." Emily understood that, would probably always understand that, because trust was something you rebuilt constantly, not something you achieved once and forgot about. "I love you," she said, "even when you're being neurotic about me leaving. I love you too, even when you're being stubborn about letting me help with things. We're kind of a mess. The best kind of mess." They fell asleep like that, holding each other in a penthouse that had stopped feeling like a showroom and started feeling like home. And if Emily dreamed about rainy nights and impossible choices and the strange way life worked out, she didn't remember them in the morning. What she remembered was waking up to Sophie arguing with Sarah about breakfast choices and Alexander burning toast and Maria laughing at all of them. She remembered normal Tuesday mornings in a life she'd never planned but couldn't imagine living without. And she remembered that sometimes the best things happen when you stop trying to survive and start choosing to really live. When you risk trust even after betrayal. When you let yourself love even when love has hurt you before. Because in the end, that's all any of us can do. Take the risk, make the choice, build something real from broken pieces, and hope that when the rain comes, because the rain always comes, we've built something strong enough to weather it together. Emily had. Against all odds, despite every reason to guard her heart and play it safe, she'd built a life worth living, and that, she thought, was worth more than any empire.